Chapter 901 Helios. That huge thing was suspended in the Forbidden Academy. It was larger than the Forbidden Academy. It was like a black pearl manor suspended in midair, blocking the sky above the Forbidden Academy. And beside it, there were still more than 60 unknown objects in the shape of swords or rhombuses with petals floating quietly. The 40 sword-shaped spaceships hanging upside down in the sky are naturally the Silver Knights. They are all 6 stories high. And the 20 huge prismatic crystals that look like they are wrapped in petals are the Seraph Glory Angels. Look slightly stronger than the Silver Knight. Their appearance has a huge contribution from demons. Many magic materials provided by the demons. These stolen things can be used with a little processing with the help of the crystal array and magic assistants. Some that are difficult to use can also be extracted directly by the builder. This greatly accelerated the repair progress of the Sanctuary Factory, and also greatly accelerated the production period of the Executors and Seraphs. No more slow ion recombination entirely by the builder. The behemoth surrounded by the Silver Knights and Seraphs is Unit 0. Sun God. It's a real battleship. It has a fusiform shape as a whole, but the front half and back half of the body are separated, and the middle is completely composed of energy. The front half of the body has 4 arms. Each of these 4 arms looks like a broken spider claw inlaid with many crystals. It is indeed broken, because half of the body of these arms is made of solid material, and the other half does not exist in 3 dimensions. The material of the God Colossus that cannot be seen or touched. These 4 arms are holding a prismatic crystal in their virtual claws. This crystal is 100% pure Pandora crystal, with many magic patterns engraved on it. It is the launch barrel of the Sun God and the ammunition of the Sun God. As for the core of the Sun God, it is located in a certain cabin inside. Indeed, it was eventually named Sun God. The name George gave it to as the Void Glorious battleship, which was rejected by Soraya. The numerous Silver Knight Seraphs are like aerial fortresses guarding the Sun God, and the Sun God is a giant aerial fortress surrounded by fortresses. The silly dragons in the shelter, headed by Malim, were playing around these big guys, and some of them even climbed on them to bask in the sun. But they generally couldn't stay long because these spaceships were too smooth. It was also cold, and some stupid dragon breathed fire on it, but it couldn't heat it up. It can be seen that except for Malim, the other dragons are like little cubs in front of the Silver Knight and Seraph. As for Malim, he is also a little cub in front of the Sun God, including the 100-meter-long Malim on the tail. It was less than a quarter of the size of the Sun God. It looked like a thin and small gecko crawling there. Wizards are floating near these behemoths, detecting various data, and occasionally they will drive away those stupid dragons. Of course, there are dragons among these wizards, and those dragons that are over 300 years old are wise. They rarely move around the sanctuary in dragon form. Most of them move in the form of wizards, and a few dragons turn into knights. This form of elemental dragons makes it easier for them to absorb the pure energy in the crystal array. That is to say, there is no need to eat much, including many wizards in the sanctuary. After the body's magic richness reaches a certain level, eating is no longer necessary. These behemoths suddenly appeared over the sanctuary recently. In the first few days, the residents of the shelter were very curious and the streets were deserted. Before, everyone had only seen these new spaceships in journals. But today they are actually seeing things. I heard that they flew into low Earth orbit and fired a shot at Mars before, and they should be back to make adjustments now. It seems that the transformation of Unit 0 is not completely finished yet, and scientists still have to work on it. In the past 2 days, everyone has become a little numb to the things above their heads. What should be done? The topic has returned to daily life, and occasionally they will talk about distant battlefields. Occasionally, children will point to something in the sky and ask their parents what it is. At this time, the parents will buy a copy of the latest scientific journal to let the children know that these protector gods passed down by word of mouth are not. What a god! How can those gods be as powerful as them? They can hit from one world to another indeed. The attack range of the Helios now exceeds 1 astronomical unit. You can hit several nearby planets from the shelter continent. In the eyes of the so-called gods, isn't this just a fight from one world to another? As for the power, the gods couldn't withstand one shot anyway. Even if this is a weakened version. The punk god Colossus after the magic transformation. Anthony and others were smoking their pipes and discussing the most detailed test data around Thorleywood on the roof of the Cathedral of the Dawn. In front of them, various full-system projection light screens were projected in front of the wizards. The sliding of their hands kept flickering and switching. Occasionally, they would stop, point to some data on the light screen, and discuss it. Strictly speaking, the creator of the Sun God was not the wizards, but Soraya. because she was the only one who could cooperate with Solwood to change the shape and structure of Unit 0 and successfully transform it. George was very concerned about the latest testing situation, but he couldn't understand what the wizards were saying. Anthony, I haven't had time to study this knowledge in the past few years. Can you explain it to me in a simpler way? Anthony sighed and took off the pipe from his mouth. Let's watch a movie. As he spoke, the wizard snapped his fingers, and a huge holographic projection appeared in front of everyone. The second-generation Silver Knight and Angel of Radiance are both finished products, and the effects are considered to have met expectations. And this movie is the test record of several of the shelter's current weapons in space orbit. Regarding the test of Silver Knight 2, there was no firepower test, because compared with the first-generation machine, the firepower of the second-generation machine is not much different. But the two models are also very different. The Silver Knight 2 could really fly. When George saw it in the picture, it disappeared in the blink of an eye, like a ray of light. In another picture, a Silver Knight 2 began to climb from the temple, and finally successfully entered space orbit. Although it is still in front of it, its speed is already over Mach 23. This kind of thing. Devils can't beat it. Their magic simply can't catch up. Now, the only flaw of Silver Knight 2 is battery life. This can only be solved in the next generation. Currently, they still need crystal array charging. The built-in micro magic hub is not powerful enough. Anthony puffed his pipe and switched a picture. It can be seen that this is an energy platform with 2 types of Silver Knights and 2 types of Seraphs parked on it. And the Sun God is also here. There are also some suspended crystal arrays around. There are also wizards on it. And they wear what Soraya calls the holy clothes of heaven, that is, powered armor. Currently, 6 energy platforms have entered space, and they have become the super aircraft carriers of the Sanctuary fleet. Of course, the fleet is somewhat small in comparison. According to the data, if fully equipped, each energy platform can carry hundreds of spacecraft of this size. The scene changed, and what appeared this time was the Seraphi Sun Angel, which George had never seen in real form. There are 3 units in total. Chapter 902 Doomsday Weapon Seraph Golem. There are 3 Sun Angels in total. They seem to be smaller than the Radiant Angels, and their appearance is also very different. It is in the shape of a shuttle, much like an enlarged silver shuttle. The appearance should also be smoother. From that appearance, you can also see the stars and the earth reflected in it. At this time, there were many pure white rings of light flowing from beginning to end in their LS. After a few minutes, viscous light clusters wrapped by electromagnetism flew rapidly into the distance. These materials wrapped by electromagnetism are not gases, liquids, or solids. They are a super-energy fluid, the same material on the sun. Hey, you don't understand even after I tell you. Anthony shook his head, started showing off. But unfortunately, this time his pretense failed. Isn't it just plasma? George took 2 puffs of dry cigarette. I have seen the design drawings. Their appearance will form electron clouds, which are used to heat and accelerate the plasma. However, our current position is not enough to let the Sun Angel to collect particles as plasma in space. The atmosphere needs to be extracted and then heated. In other words, these pump gadgets of ours cannot really be used in space battles. Moreover, these gadgets are not suitable for shooting into the atmosphere, and they are not suitable for survivors. It's punk junk compared to the plasma mini-fighter they're planning. Ahem. George, you can't say that. Anthony was a little embarrassed. He said, they shot far enough to hit those meteorite fragments. 1 shot is enough to destroy a castle-sized meteorite in an instant. It vaporizes half of it, and then blows it to pieces in the subsequent explosion and heat energy. This is much better than the effect of the Silver Knights. George nodded. The Silver Knight couldn't break such meteoric iron, but the rock could. Anthony continued. As for attacking the ground, we still need to make adjustments. We don't have enough time at the moment. So the Sun Angel is completely designed to deal with meteorites. But according to our calculations, as long as it is reshaped and the power is turned down, the plasma they shoot out can fly dozens of kilometers even if it attenuates in the fog. After concentrating on the target, it will also produce terrifying magic explosions and shock waves. A few hits are enough to knock out a demon protected by the magic array. The city was razed to the ground. Well, George clicked the dry smoke twice, pointed at the many small goddas flying around the Sun Angel, and asked, what are these? So small. Not small. Not small. As big as a house. Palos said. This is actually a proton torpedo that the survivors plan to design. Before Palos finished speaking, he was interrupted by George with a wave of his hand. Okay. Okay. Palos, don't imitate Anthony. Tell me, what is this thing now? Palos coughed awkwardly and explained with a smile. You know, our technology is limited. So these torpedoes use things from the demon statues. They are small seraphs and can only be used once. But as long as a single hit can cause an object the size of a city to instantly disintegrate, essentially, through the interference of a special frequency band of magic explosions, the force between particles is temporarily eliminated and turned into a piece of loose sand, Anthony added. For those substances without magic power, their effect is fatal obviously. Meteorites do not have any magic array or positional shield. Isn't it enough to have this thing? George was shocked. Not enough. The wizards looked at the light curtain and puffed up their pipes, their eyes full of loss and sadness. George rubbed his face fiercely, already understanding what was going on. Boss, Moria said with a smile. Now they are too big. They have to be smaller. And they cannot fly too fast on their own. So they need the 3rd or 4th generation Silver Knight to launch. Therefore, for the time being, they can only be used as mines like satellites to prevent those large meteorites from falling. Okay, where are these Seraphi Radiant Angels? Let me take a look. After George finished speaking, Anthony and others switched the screen. Although the Seraphi Radiant Angel is the 1st generation, wizards seem to be more satisfied with it than the more advanced Seraphi Sun Angel. At this time, what is playing on the screen is the scene of the Glory Angel shooting independently. When their petal-like cantilevers unfolded, the petals and the crystal prism in the middle formed energy nodes. And then the prisms were excited, releasing streaks of terrifying red light. Isn't this the golem? Garby said in surprise. Look at the red light. The boss is the one who chased us and shot him half a year ago. Obviously, the emergence of Seraph I was greatly contributed by the demonic statue. Although the power of the red beams they emit is not as powerful as Garoxter's full blow, and is only 80% of that of the demon god statue. It does not wither in one shot. The demon god statue is a 3-second man. But the Seraph, the glorious angels, were able to focus continuously for more than 10 minutes. The wizened old wizard Riscard chuckled and said, It will definitely reach climax. And it also has a lot of thrust. Palos said, It is perfect. Of course, it is not suitable for use in fog. It is okay if it is combined with dawn fire. Otherwise, the foggy atmosphere will affect its power. In fact, there are still some flaws. Anthony puffed his pipe and said, The shooting distance of the Radiant Angels is not able to meet the needs of over-distance operations. The light spears they release will diverge more and more with distance. The more serious it is. After arriving near the moon, the cross-sectional area of these beams will cover the entire moon. What about the power? George's heart skipped a beat. How about the power when it hits the back of the moon? Many wizards smoked their pipes and remained silent. Thoriwood also lit his pipe, looking disappointed. But he gave George an answer. Absolutely like a flashlight. My great maesters, you called me here today. Are you kidding me? Are you saying that only the Sun Angel can hit the distance? And you can't aim accurately? George, I want to correct you. Anthony looked at George seriously, seeming to be dissatisfied with George's doubts about these works. He said, It's not that it's inaccurate, it has a crosshair. Within 100 meters, there is still a certain hit rate. George felt slightly dizzy and almost fell into Garby's arms. Don't worry, George. These things are enough, Solwood said very calmly. The eyes of our spaceship are in the Forbidden Sanctuary. As for the issue of the Angel of Radiance, these little things, fighting at a distance, it is used by the Sun God. As the scene turned, the Sun God in space unfolded his 4 huge arms. Many energy beams in the arms converged into the phase crystal and were guided into the core of the prism to form a destructive golden spear of light. At this time, many radiant angels nearby also shot their red light into the prism core of the Sun God. The red and golden energy combined to form a more terrifying blue light spear. The light spear suddenly expanded in a large circle and flew towards the distant Mars at the speed of light. It lasted for several minutes. The picture ends here. It is currently impossible to observe the details of the light spear hitting Mars. However, according to the astronomical observation data, the target was indeed hit, but it was not because the aim was accurate, but because the calculation was accurate. Chapter 903 Friendly Academic Exchange. George, according to the collected test data and the results of mathematical model deduction, the light spear of the Sun God will hardly diverge in theory. Do you know what this means? It means that in theory it can shoot to the outside of the solar system, Anthony said excitedly. The power of these light spears is enough to penetrate neutron-level strong interaction armor. And the more sun gods there are, and the more focal lengths of light spears, the more terrifying the power will be. As long as the energy is enough, then only a few of them can travel through the stars. When passing the edge of the solar system, one shot towards the sun is enough to create a huge gap in the sun god. The light spear will shoot into the core of the sun, destroys the pressure balance inside the star, causing the sun to collapse and detonate it. The resulting supernova explosion will sweep across the entire solar system. Our planet will instantly turn into purgatory. Speaking of this, Anthony felt a little melancholy. He puffed his pipe and said, "Unfortunately, we failed to repair its zero-point reactor. Even with the information, we cannot understand these things. Otherwise, it would be enough to destroy the ancient gods. What it currently uses is essentially the fuel is the divine power of the sun, which burns everything. It is the cheapest fuel in the universe and can be collected and replenished. The flame retardant uses the properties of Pandora crystals and crystal arrays to convert psychic substances into positive particles." Listening to what Anthony said, George sighed. Although the sanctuary began to develop based on the theoretical basis of 300 years of research on the Forbidden Sanctuary, its technical level was still limited and could not absorb too much of the technology and heritage of the gods, just like a group of monkeys. In Thoriwood, with the help of the Kashia Protoss and many other tank engineers, several tank parts were removed and polished into an indestructible Excalibur, and some iron-tipped bows and arrows. But these metal weapons are enough to kill any monkey. Even the demons, who have entered the Stone Age and are about to enter the Bronze Age, cannot withstand this attack. George, our Seraphs, although they still need to be optimized for a while, are already powerful enough. They are enough to vaporize the floating islands in an instant. Of course, the asteroid that is more than 20 kilometers away is a sphere and is much larger than the floating islands. The Sky Island is much larger, Anthony said. But even in the worst-case scenario, the asteroid is made of metal as the main body. We can use multiple energy platforms to jump, and through all-round strikes from multiple angles, we can within 10 minutes crush it. Then it just takes a while to slowly clean up the debris, and then we can see that beautiful meteor shower from the ground." When Lorna heard this, she nodded excitedly. Of course, now they are all blind on the scale of this space. So although our range is sufficient, we can't hit it. In addition, we still lack a locking and scanning technology, of course. We can also wait a few more days. Wait until the meteorite flies in, and aim with the naked eye, Anthony said, shaking his head. George rubbed his face fiercely. And when he saw it, he would shudder? "Tell me, Anthony, what do you want me to grab from the Forbidden Sanctuary this time?" "Ahem. How can you say that the wizard's matter is robbery?" "George," Anthony corrected. Borrowing. There was a fluctuation in time and space, and Ibrahimovic's body appeared nearby. "Dear, don't forget the parts on our Dawn. There must be some in the Forbidden Sanctuary. That's our mothership," Ibrahimovic said excitedly. "We can also borrow some." "Well, Anthony, what will happen if our Seraph hits the ground?" George asked. "If the Radiant Angels hit the moon alone, it would be a long-range shot. But if they hit the atmosphere, it would be equivalent to shooting in the face." The wizards discussed excitedly. They felt that the Seraphs were too powerful, so they did not recommend hitting the ground, because this might bring an early doomsday to the planet. Anthony rubbed his chin and thought for a while, then replied, "It may affect the atmosphere, but if you reduce the power, it should be fine." "Well, reduce the power enough to boil a sea of water." After listening, George understood that Anthony and others had considered a lot about the power after reducing the power, and whether the power would be too great after reducing the power. He was relieved that reducing the power would not affect the planet's environment. "Hurry up during this period and get them all on track next week." George took the cigarette handed over by Garvey, took 2 puffs, and said slowly, "Let's show the sun to the Forbidden Sanctuary." After hearing this, Rusgard clapped his hands excitedly and cheered loudly. The corners of Moria's and Thoriwood's eyes twitched. After listening to this, Anthony was trembling all over. "George, you can't do this. You can't do this. These are things I participated in designing. How can you use them to attack my home?" "Ha! How is that possible?" "I'm just kidding," George said in a deceptive way. "It's just a drill to let the Forbidden Wizards take a look at our weapons. Be careful, Anthony." "Ha." Anthony was deceived, but he didn't notice that George's eyes had always been cold when he was a child. Judging from some of the information provided by Carl, many things owned by the demons have the involvement of the Forbidden Sanctuary, including the demon god statue. After the wizards analyzed the demon statue, They also determined this possibility. The Taoist friend who died in the Forbidden Sanctuary, Buddy Pingdao, had already reached some deals with the demons so that he could leave this world safely. And many of the raw materials in the hands of the devil are not available on this planet and can be used on the spacecraft. The information provided by Carl may not be true, and may be to sow discord. It may be that some forbidden wizards are secretly dealing with demons. For example, Moria has colluded with demons before. But Cherubim must have turned a blind eye. This time, George planned to give some warning to those forbidden wizards. Tell them that if they want to leave this world, they should not look at the face of the devil, but look at the shelter. Moreover, how can one borrow something without being intimidated? If the Dawnlight cannot be repaired, the ancient gods will not be able to solve it. Yes! Yes! This is a friendly visit! Anthony was very excited. He still thought that George would have a good talk with the forbidden wizards. He said, in addition to lending us some things to use, they also want to share Kashia's technology with us. Because according to their current situation, many things in the spacecraft cannot be repaired. Such a big thing cannot fly, it can't even reach 1% of the speed of light. So if they don't figure it out, they will have no choice but to wander among the stars, not knowing whether they can reach their destination. But many technical information in the Golden Kingdom can help them achieve many things. Ahem. Sir, Moria Cofton said. Sir, in fact, we have already sent part of the data. The Forbidden Sanctuary understands very well what this is. The meaning of the High-Level Magic Council is very clear. The opinions are very unified. The invitation letter this time actually invites us to pick up the module. Boss, we didn't have sex, but those wizards were all frightened. Aji shouted. The wizards are really weak. The wizards around them looked a little ugly. Ahem, Moria Cofton said. It should be said that the demons are ignorant, but the forbidden wizards all know the true meaning of these things. George pondered for a moment, then nodded. If the wizards in the Forbidden Sanctuary can see the current situation clearly, then everything will be easy to handle. Oh, then there is no need to park them in space next week. Put them on top of the sanctuary, and bring them to the wizards to see our scientific research results. You should prepare something these days. Prepare for academic exchanges and so on. Fool Anthony smiled happily. Obviously, he didn't understand what George meant. But Moria breathed a huge sigh of relief. He understood. Obviously, the boss was not joking just now. But now if the wizards in the Forbidden Sanctuary can cooperate with the bandits honestly, the boss will still be reluctant to part with them. The ones who fired into the sanctuary. As for now, it might just be a deterrent. At least the sun god won't fire. Of course, if the wizards were obedient, the Silver Knight and Seraph would not fire. Chapter 904 Forbidden Sanctuary. The silly wizards excitedly discussed the upcoming academic exchange. The wizards seemed to be very enthusiastic about this matter, and had an attitude of learning. During the discussion, the wizards speculated on the level of magical civilization in the sanctuary. They argued endlessly, and everyone gave different guesses. But there is no doubt that in the eyes of wizards, that holy city is undoubtedly the top and most perfect. Listening to the discussions and curiosity raised by his friends, Anthony, who was originally very excited, gradually became embarrassed, because when he left, the laboratory in the sanctuary was only the Buick Kingdom Academy of Stars. The best laboratory has only been developed for 30 years. After the last upgrade of laboratories in various countries, this gap has become smaller and smaller. As long as the Moon Country develops for another 30 years, I am afraid it will be overtaken in a corner. As for the executors in heaven and the seraphs, Anthony raised his head. With a trace of confusion in his eyes, the invitation letter to the Forbidden Sanctuary was written by the teacher. George and everyone else were reading this too. The content written in it was very professional, and no more than 100 wizards in the shelter could understand it. But in addition to this invitation letter, there were actually hundreds of letters in the sanctuary. Anthony read all of these letters, but did not dare to show them to anyone else. Because the forbidden wizards are asking why it is not a stone puppet standing on the ground. Is it because the puppet is really difficult to fly? Originally, in Anthony's original design a few years ago, these small sword-shaped frigates floating in the air were indeed magic puppets. This is the original thinking of a top forbidden wizard. The only one who truly knows what these things are and what their significance is his teacher, the Angel of Wisdom, Milo Cassius. Besides Anthony, no one else joined the discussion, because he knows too much about those guys who are guarding the treasure but don't know how to exploit it. Except for the old bastard Miligasius. The other wizards are all a group of arrogant, self-righteous idiots. He smiled coldly, spat into his hand, took out a small notebook, and turned it over. There were densely packed names written down on it. George moved over to look at Rusgard's small notebook with interest, and then looked at each other with Rusgard. The two of them had a good understanding and laughed sinisterly. Forbidden Sanctuary. The mysterious wizarding city on the sea. Many islands are like stars, guarding this 20-kilometer diameter floating city in the center. Seen from the sky, this city floating in midair is very weird. It looks like a flat, equilateral triangular island, and it's turning slowly. In its central position, there is a raised bustling city. The edge of the city is a very regular circle. No buildings are built outside this circular area, because once the protective shield is opened, the center of the triangle this area will be blocked by the energy shield. There are many tall towers in the city, as well as many tall towers and small islands flying in midair. You can see many wizards standing on many small energy platforms, chatting with their companions, and then walking through the city. On the three corners outside the city, there are many raised elliptical energy light curtains. The inside is an ecological zone. If you look carefully, you can see many crops floating in the air inside. They are all grown without soil, cultivated. Although these crops occupy very little space, their annual output is high, enough to supply the needs of 100,000 people. The ground near these oval energy light curtains is still covered with a lot of stone and soil. Originally, there were even many buildings in these areas. Now the wizards seem to be leading the farmers to clean up the stone and soil in these triangular areas. It can be seen that after the stone and soil layers in some areas have been removed, the metal ground has been exposed. Surrounding this entire triangular island are many floating islands. These small islands are separated from the big island, but they are slowly rotating with the big island. It's like they are bound together by some invisible force. The interior of the small island is also an ecological zone, and some crops here can even grow directly into meat. In these small islands, there are teleportation arrays established by wizards, through which they can establish communication with the cities in the larger islands. Below the floating island, ships are coming and going. These ships are adventurers and merchants who have traveled thousands of miles. They have gone through countless hardships to reach this mysterious forbidden sanctuary, but they are often unable to enter the city. In order to get the chance to enter the city, many visitors who yearn for the magical world often choose to stay in the archipelago below the floating island and wait. Gradually, many more towns have appeared on the archipelago, with the tacit consent of the wizards. These towns have also become places where supplies are transferred to the forbidden sanctuary. Occasionally, when the wizards are in a good mood, they will come down for a stroll, or send out a group of unqualified people, throw out some junk. Magical knowledge and magical artifacts from all over the world come from the hands of these people. Occasionally, some people can repair the garbage thrown out of the sanctuary. The ancient magic hubs that have been passed down come from this. But these people who were expelled from the sanctuary were not real forbidden wizards, just technicians. Historically, there were no more than 10 people who had the qualifications of forbidden wizards, but walked out of the city. The holy city does not only expel people from outside. In certain special years, forbidden wizards will also come to these towns and select some underage children to enter the sanctuary. Only these underage children have the opportunity to enter the sanctuary. Most of them are the best descendants of navigators. But in the past 2 years, fewer and fewer people have been able to enter the city, and more people are being expelled from the sanctuary. This has led to many more guys calling themselves forbidden wizards all over the world. But in the eyes of real forbidden wizards, people outside the sanctuary are all lowly. The arrogant forbidden wizards are not even willing to say a word to these people on the ground, because in the eyes of the forbidden wizards, they are a group of new species and new humans that represent the future of the new world. The people outside the sanctuary have become two different species. In their eyes, those ignorant ground species are all dirty and lowly monkeys, primitives and aborigines. However, in recent days, the exchanges between the forbidden wizards and the indigenous people on the ground seem to have become more frequent. Some wizards are no longer so arrogant, and even have great interest and curiosity in the things taken out by the ground species. But what these adventurers brought was only from last year, and they, who had never asked about the affairs of the mainland, gradually began to ask about the affairs of the Seven Kingdoms, and felt incredible about the development of the Moon Kingdom in the past 100 years. They could actually use magic. Occasionally, interesting papers will appear in various societies and journals on the development of civilization of secondary intelligent organisms. From time to time, the High-Level Magic Council will also come up with some suggestions, such as going to the sanctuary to select some smarter monkeys and carry out some intellectual enlightenment work. This is certainly not to train anyone to enter the holy city, because they do not have the noble bloodline of pure-blood wizards. A monkey is a monkey. But today, when the wizards looked up and saw the huge unknown object slowly emerging from the clouds. These pure-blood wizards were no different from the stunned terrestrial species. In the sanctuary, a light group looked at the sky and sighed secretly. Maybe my sister is right. Knowledge needs to be popularized. And only in that popularization can the spark of wisdom burst out. Cherubim closed his eyes and put away his light wings. His body gradually became smaller, and many particles began to reorganize into a wizard's robe on his body. Stop charging the magic tower, which will attract ill will. Open the shield, and we welcome the guests. Chapter 905 Cherubim Melodious. Amid the cheers and cheers of the forbidden wizards, George and others entered the forbidden sanctuary. The wizards from the sanctuary visited and inspected the place amidst the stars. As Moria said before, the forbidden wizards know what is in the sky, and those who do not know what those things are now also know everything from the angels of wisdom. They have fear and panic, but more importantly, they are in awe of the knowledge. This kind of worship and awe made them lower their arrogant heads and open their doors. In other words, this door that had been closed for 300 years was completely open because of the boiling sea water near the sanctuary. After hearing that the wizards in the sanctuary were willing to have an academic exchange with them, the awe in the hearts of the forbidden wizards turned into respect. And their next actions also verified what George said: forbidden wizards are all weaklings. Indeed, it is true. Deny that more than 200 years ago, this group of escapees had already decided the winner with the Holy Court. For 300 years, Cherubim has been trying various methods to lead the wizards to repair the solar balance. Although they cannot completely restore it with their abilities, they can now see that many things here. Everything that can be replaced has been replaced, and everything that can be repaired has been repaired. At least it looks like it on the surface. The lifting frame in the Forbidden Sanctuary, or the solar balance, is very tall, enough to allow a small spacecraft to shuttle in midair. Along the way, George and others also saw many magnetic gold shuttles and silver shuttles. Although the latter is much larger than the Survivor's silver shuttle, it can be seen that the most cutting-edge technology of the Sanctuary has reached the technical threshold of the Survivors. In the absence of data, it is not easy for them to start from scratch and derive it through reverse technology within 300 years. If Cherubim also discovered a Unit 0 and its builder, then Seraph and the magic assistants would definitely be able to create it. After looking at it for a while, George realized that the technology tree of the shelter was just as the wizard said, and it was very deformed. All resources were piled on one point, bringing them to the forefront. But the Forbidden Sanctuary is fully developed, so the foundation is very solid. If both parties can develop together, then the Forbidden Sanctuary can become another temple after all. What's more commendable is that the material science of Sanctuary was developed from scratch without any gaps. When making anything, there is no need to demolish the east wall to make up for the west wall. The only regrettable thing is that George discovered that Cherubaeus did not seem to popularize all knowledge and technology. He almost used the forbidden wizards as mechanics. This makes most wizards know the reason, but not the reason. For various high-end items, I only know how to operate the equipment to make them, but not the theory. Some people don't even know what they are doing. They are just like factory workers. It seems that only the rulers of the high-level magic council know the real thing, and only the descendants of these high-level wizards can enter and exit the library at will and read some information, such as Anthony. They are the real engineers and scientists. After arriving at a certain hall, many wizards bowed to the Supreme Chancellor, who was waiting here. Then, the Supreme Chancellor, with the pseudonym of Melodious the Wise Angel, came down in person and brought his own 7 students join George and others. After that, the entire team was divided into several parts. The forbidden wizards in charge of different projects and areas took the shelter wizards to visit various locations, while the cherubim took George, Anthony, and others to the library. In fact, many years ago, I began to secretly study the solar balance. The main reason why this sunken mothership was preserved after the war was because of the curiosity of the angels. Although he only used the sun balance as his personal collection and plaything at the beginning, what he never expected was that this plaything would later become his own sanctuary. But this theoretical scientist is not good at application. Thoriwu did not follow him, letting him turn his attention to the wizards. But it is a pity that this wise angel, who is known as the source of knowledge, has not truly fulfilled his role in these 300 years and has not ignited the true fire of truth in the hearts of wizards. He still manages this place in God's way, and is very stingy with his precious knowledge. So essentially, he created another religion invisibly, and he used this religion as a tool to control the wizards so that their knowledge could never surpass his. It also allowed the sanctuary to guard a huge wealth in the past 300 years, but failed to fully develop it. These forbidden wizards seem to lack creative thinking. They just continue to realize what the God of Wisdom has given them, which brings a little good and a little bad. The good thing is that the finished products produced by Forbidden Sanctuary are all really good stuff. Not punk at all. The disadvantage is that few people can draw inferences and come up with new gadgets. Therefore, wizards have developed very few things themselves. If a damaged builder is handed over to them, what they will do next is to spend hundreds of years trying to restore it, instead of coming up with some knockoff punk products put into production. The most obvious feature is that the Sanctuary does not have a crystal plate that can replace the light array. Instead, it has made a very, very large light array. From the perspective of Cherubim, whether it is the light wings, the light spear, the miniature forbidden demon tower, silent magic prism, or the triangular executor and seraph, they all contain the inspiration of many human beings. Now, the ideas of many shelter wizards are obviously completely wrong. But these shelter wizards are able to discover new things because of their mistakes, and spark sparks of innovation. For so many years, maybe I have been traveling on the wrong path. I was too self-righteous and thought that I could accomplish everything with my own wisdom. But the immortal years have already made my thinking rigid, and more ironically, it was only in the past few years that I discovered this error. Melosius continued with some sigh. We proclaim ourselves gods, but what we do has always been completely opposite to what we symbolize. Maybe the appearance of the ancient gods is our punishment. George was deeply convinced by Melosius's words. Judging from the mythical stories in the earliest holy scriptures, these 7 brothers were once extremely hypocritical. Cherubim is known as the source of wisdom, but it is a treasure of its own. Ariadne claims to be a loving angel, but she is selfish and jealous. Soraya, who was once just, was not fair at all. Her balance was always tilted towards heaven and herself. And the god of war was also a fierce and brave person. The mercy of the compassionate angels is also selective and hypocritical kindness, while the generous angels are always generous to others. The god of creation and the cherubim have never enlightened mankind, causing the 7 kingdoms to reincarnate in the feudal era for tens of thousands of years. It wasn't until the doomsday struck that some of the patronizing gods finally had an epiphany after their rebirth. The god of war was reincarnated as Alexander, the human guardian, who was courageous and dared to sacrifice himself. Soraya became the righteous angel with a righteous heart. The angel of creation became the teacher of the wizards, imparting all his skills and abilities to them. The god of mercy also finally dedicated himself, allowing the world to have more time. The generous angel also sacrificed his life generously, but failed. Except for Aaron, everyone has basically found themselves again. Chapter 906. Did the dinosaurs on Earth just become extinct? After today's bombardment of the country, Melosius finally came to a realization. He led everyone to the Forbidden Library that no one had ever been to before. It is actually not accurate to say that no one has been there, because wizards come here every day. It's just that no one has seen what this place really looks like. When Melosius revealed the true appearance of this place to everyone's eyes, the walls and dome turned into a dark void, and the sun, moon, and stars suddenly appeared in the void. There were bursts of exclamations from the crowd. George and others suddenly discovered that this turned out to be a superstar array. This star array is completely different from the punk thing on the Dawnlight. If you zoom in on a certain area, you can even see the meteorite flying towards somewhere. But what really shocked the wizards was that when the star map was enlarged and turned into an image of the entire galaxy, the wizards discovered that the orbits of Saturn and Jupiter were all wrong. Their positions were different from what they observed. Are different. After calculating silently, many wizards' eyes widened, because they found that the orbits of those stars were correct. But the orbits of those stars in the star map were several minutes faster than what was observed. This is correct because the speed of light is delayed. The movement of stars shown in this star chart is real time. This is impossible. Anthony shouted with a pale face. This does not conform to the theory. There is no warp point in this starry sky, and the transmission of information cannot exceed the speed of light. Is it quantum transmission? Rusgard frowned. Rosgard, you should study less about biology and more about this aspect. Quantum can only be used for encryption, and cannot be used for faster-than-light communication. Paolo stroked his beard and said with a very solemn expression, strictly speaking, the speed of light cannot be surpassed in any dimension. It's just that the speed of light is different in different dimensions, but, as Anthony said, there are no warp points and no detectors in this galaxy. During the discussion among the wizards in the sanctuary, the forbidden wizards looked confused. But Cherubim could hear it clearly. He and Solwood suddenly looked at each other, both showing expressions of regret. It seems that most of the knowledge in the Golden Kingdom has been destroyed, Cherubim said with a sigh. Indeed, The highest theoretical knowledge we have obtained so far is incomplete, and most of it does not meet our current needs. Thoriwood looked at some of the equipment and books in the library with a strange expression on his face. He showed a light of excitement. But you seem to be very comprehensive here. But you just failed to apply it. It seems that you have written a lot in these years. I can contribute all of it. I am also willing to share it with everyone. At this point, Cherubaeus looked hesitantly at George, who was fuming next to Anthony and pretending to understand clearly. George, I know you the reason for coming here this time. But I hope you can understand my decision all along. I also hope that I can reach an agreement with you. What a stranger. Lord Melosius, George said with a smile. We are all a family. Who are you and me? Melosius naturally understood the meaning of George's words, and his face couldn't help but look ugly. What? George looked at the stars above his head and said, I'm curious about where you want to go. Melosius's expression moved slightly, and he said no more words. In the following time, the wizards used the star map data to find the location of the meteorite group. In the hall next door, there were many very professional astronomical equipment. All of them were actually used in space. So after the wizards recorded the data, they all went next door. Only George was left in the library with a few people and Cherubim, drinking tea and watching the stars. The two chatted about a lot of things, mostly about the situation in the outside world in recent years. There have been so many changes over the years. The sanctuary became another holy court, and many fallen angels died. But what shocked Cherubae even more were the demon statues that were killed, because these things were secretly participated by the scum of forbidden wizards, and they can be regarded as the highest technological crystallization of the forbidden sanctuary. But it looked like paper in front of the shelter. On the other hand, the shelter used the materials of the demon statue to make something even more powerful. The battles fought in the sanctuary had an earth-shaking impact on Melosius. So he opened his mind today and acted very candidly. George, strictly speaking, your knowledge level is far inferior to that of sanctuary, but you have turned limited things into reality. On the other hand, we are a bit too bloated. We are more like a research institute, and you are an arsenal. I think this war has been decided. George nodded. At this time, everyone had left, and he had expressed his attitude. After taking a sip of tea, George said lightly, Lord Melosius, in fact, this war is far from over. We all know who our ultimate enemy is. To a certain extent, I agree with you. Many ideas just like Irene. Oh, just like Ariadne once said to me, there are always some seeds left in this world. Speaking of this, George sighed. For the ancient god, there are only two options that can stop him. But whether it can succeed is unknown. I never dare to express my worries about the future to anyone. But today I hope you can know that to me. You far travelers are not traitors and deserters, but one of our seeds. If we fail to deal with the faceless man, you can at least make our civilization possible. Keep it going. Melosius was a little surprised. He had thought that George was a crazy military dictator and an extremely stubborn arrogant, but he didn't expect that he had been thinking about the future. So, Lord Melosius, we are willing to share our information with you. We also hope that after you perfect this spacecraft, you will be safer on the road. Speaking of this matter, Melosius's expression also became solemn, and he sighed sadly. According to the situation, we need at least 10 years of preparation before we can have some chance to arrive safely. Destination. If Yongi comes too early, then this trip may not be much different from dying. We can discuss this matter later, when Ibrahimovic and others confirm the data. George said, the data you have about the sun here is more accurate. I think they will calculate a rough time range. Having said that, Lord Melosius, how to use this star map? There is a place. George changed his tune mid-sentence. He wanted to ask where the Earth was, but he thought it would be better not to bring trouble back home. If Melosius really finds this place and the coordinates are exposed, wouldn't it cause a lot of trouble? So we can't rush this matter. When we defeat the ancient god, it's not too late to secretly chart the stars and take our wives home. In a few years, Valinea will have to return from another river system. Have you come here? To them. A journey of several thousand light years is about the same as a few thousand miles. Let them send you home. No problem. Aaron still wants to be a god? Ha ha ha. The Earth is in the age of ending Dharma. Of course, I must bring back some valuable things, magical objects and the like, and then live out my remaining years as a rich man in my hometown. Ahem. I mean, what is this? Is it time? Oh, this is the Titan calendar. Melosius stood up with a burning gaze and operated the star map. We use the Star of Protection to rotate once as a year. But in the chronology of the Creator, they use one revolution of the galaxy as 1 year. Each galactic year is 250 million years. And each galactic month is approximately 23.33 million years. Listening to Melosius's words, George nodded. He knew that he and the Earth were in the same river system. It's just not on a cantilever. It's closer to the galactic center. The so-called Titan is actually the Milky Way. After all, according to Don Light once told himself, he had seen what the Earth looked like when he pulled George over from the fragments of space and time. As Melosius operated, a vast image of the galaxy was revealed in front of George's eyes. According to time, we are now at the beginning of the 18th Titan year. 17? 17 times 2.5 inch. George counted with his fingers curiously. 4.49808 billion years. Thoriwood put down the teacup and gave a number calmly. This number was like a thunder, ringing in George's mind. How much? 4.49808 billion years. Melosius calculated and said. Calculated as 4.5 billion years. George was feeling dizzy for a while, and almost knocked over the cup on the coffee table. You too. There is something wrong with your calculations. It should be 4.55 billion years now. Cherubaeus and Creation Angel looked at each other in surprise, then pinched their fingers and counted again. George, you calculated an extra 60 million years. A difference of 60 million years? George's eyes darkened. This is the Jurassic era? No. The dinosaurs just became extinct? Indeed. There are still over 60 million left before the CEO is born. You come from another parallel world. Of course, the Earth here is also your home, because you will still be born in the future of this Earth. It's just that his surname is not Joe. What's that called? Don Light remains silent. The CEO has the ability to change history. Don Light is afraid that the CEO will change history. Is it possible that I am still a great guy in this world? Chapter 907 Parallel World. George was deeply hit and shocked by Don Light's words. And then Melosius gave him a lot of shock. But after George reported the data on the third cantilever, yellow dwarf star, 8 to 12 planets, the existence of more than 2 gaseous planets and habitable stars, Melosius found out about the third cantilever. More than a dozen star systems were found. These are several star systems that Warworth and others have visited. George said nothing, took a few glances quietly, and then recognized the solar system. Then he became silent again. But in the end, George had a strange look on his face, and saw Melosius pulling him over very solemnly. George, this news may shock you, but I have to say it emphatically, this is your former home. Melosius, don't be joking. The corners of George's mouth twitched, and there was a buzz in his head. I am a native of Rodunk. Of course I know this. Melosius was stunned and said, I mean, this is the home of all of us Thoriwood. Am I right in saying this? Strictly speaking, we are an artificial man transformed from the god Colossus. Thoriwood touched his chin, nodded and said, Indeed. The more George listened, the more confused he became. What are you talking about? Why can't I understand? George, haven't you noticed? Melosius bent down and said with a mysterious face, People in our world suddenly appeared 1.7 million years ago. And in this world, in the archaeological excavations, a Pithecus erectus has never been found. Melosius enlarged the star map, and the solar system was revealed in front of George's eyes. And the stars in this galaxy are also called the Sun. There are 9 planets, but the 9th one is not Pluto, but a dim star in the farthest place, slowly orbiting the solar system. It is the size of Jupiter, and has a companion star. Double star system? This matter was completely beyond George's understanding. He didn't know whether the scientists in his hometown had not yet discovered the dim little sun in the distance, or whether the little sun only existed in this parallel universe. Later, George discovered a special symbol, the Stargate, near the dim little star. A broken Stargate. George's head was buzzing with dizziness. Our ancestors fled here from that Stargate. Melosius sighed. The civilization there has been destroyed by civil war, and now it has entered a long nuclear winter. Unfortunately, the gods are not there. Build a stellar megastructure, Dyson Sphere, so the ecological environment there cannot be rolled back, and the cold winter may last for tens of millions of years. George. Listening to Melosius' story, George gradually came to his senses. According to Melosius, when Warworth and others went there, a war was going on there. Many people left their homes during that war and began interstellar colonization. The gods are paying attention to these refugees. The apes in the sanctuary star are immigrants from the ancient Earth civilization. In other words, the people in this world are all fellow villagers with me. No wonder so many time travelers in the novel meet aliens, who all look the same as humans. George was stunned for a long time. Ice Age. Nuclear winter. In other words, my ancestors are still chasing mammoths in the ice and snow? Ahem. Melosius. Solwood looked at George and changed the subject. Don't talk about this topic anymore. For George and the others, this is a bit too unacceptable. Yes. 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 Well, these dozen galaxies are all very good. But unfortunately, they are all too far away from us. Melosius excitedly operated the star map and showed George a treasure. This is where we are going. We named this place White Rock Garden. That location is more than 20,000 light years away from the shelter star. But the giant star structure can open a highway, allowing the solar balance to perform a stellar leap and reach a wormhole. And from that wormhole, you can reach the vicinity of that information. You only need to fly for a few hundred years to get there. Melosius said with stern eyes. This is a perfect primitive planet. There is a group of little foxes living there. Melosius released a video recorded on the starship. There appeared some little things about 120 to 150 meters tall, walking upright and covered with hair. It seems that they are in primitive society. But the overlord of the planet is not them, but a huge creature. This planet is in a period similar to the age of dinosaurs. This is a very rare thing. They are also vertebrate upright animals, and may even be very similar to mammals. Melosius's eyes showed great anticipation. How similar we look. Does that hacking look like it? George rolled his eyes fiercely. But looking at that beautiful planet, George couldn't help but think about it. It's not too far away from Earth. Only a few thousand light years away. Maybe people on Earth will still be able to see the little foxes in the future. As for the civilization that will protect the world more than 100 million years later, according to Kashiya's records, the advanced civilization of Tai Ginza started a war with the silicon-based civilization more than 100 million years ago, which lasted for tens of millions of years, and all the star civilizations participated in it. After the war ended, another horrific natural disaster occurred here, and mechanical unrest. Nowadays, except for a few immortals like the Protoss, there are very few civilizations left that can carry out interstellar voyages. There is no level 3 civilization in the Titan system. If we defeat the ancient gods and bring with us the technology of the Kashiya Protoss, then why not sweep them all away? Maybe. That's another story. George thought with confused eyes. Valinea, the great arbiter of the Protoss, will not provide us with technical information. According to our existing information, we can develop to a level 3 civilization. Perhaps after those 100 million years, we have broken down the barriers of knowledge and begun to explore another galaxy. Perhaps by then, our empire has fallen into decay and is in urgent need of an old doctor, of course. It is most suitable for an Earthling to be this old doctor. This can be regarded as a little bit of selfishness on my part. I will leave something to my future successor just for Valinea to take with her. In 100 million years, I don't know how much our appearance will change at that time. Maybe in the eyes of the Ground Alliance, people at that time, we might still be aliens. Aren't the people in my hometown very strange? These Titan people, who are like gods, actually look somewhat similar to them. They might even mistakenly think that the Titan people are their ancestors. But in fact, we all originate from an ancient civilization on Earth. And a time traveler from more than 100 million years in the future is still too far ahead in this civilization. Chapter 908, Sanctuary Innovation. George and Melosius eventually came to some agreement, because this escape plan should not be announced. The shelter will secretly provide some information to support the restoration of the Forbidden Sanctuary. Among the information that George will provide, in addition to the original design drawings of the solar balance and other information, there is also information on the shelter's existing super weapons. These things will allow the Forbidden Sanctuary to smash meteorites during the journey, and also have the ability to protect itself. Melosius was surprised that George was willing to provide this information. Aaron was also extremely surprised. Are you crazy, George? These are our strategic weapons. Once leaked, there may be a white tide that is more terrifying than the black tide in the future, Ariadne said in front of his younger brother. He said loudly, "This is like laying a hidden danger of war for the future of this world." These words made Melosius fall into deep thought. Originally, this old scholar really didn't expect this. But after Irene said this, Melosius felt like he was enlightened. Both moved and nervous. He looked at George. No need to say more. Irene, I believe Lord Melosius. George waved his hand. Aaron strode away in anger. George secretly praised her in his heart when singing this kind of double act. Irene must have the most tacit understanding with him. Seeing Irene leaving angrily, Melosius bowed deeply to George, and even changed the name in his mouth. Your Majesty, I am deeply touched by your trust and support beyond words. I will never let down the trust of the High Council of Dawn, and I will definitely bring the seeds of the future of mankind and the fire of truth to that distant place. Go at dawn, Melosius said with great sadness. In addition, I also promise that if we are unable to leave, Forbidden Sanctuary will relinquish its military power and join the Dawn Council as a school city. George hurriedly helped the prostrated Melosius up and comforted him. He said in his heart, What I have been waiting for is your words. This is what you said. When the time comes when I reform the sanctuary, you must cooperate well. George had serious considerations about providing these precious information. After all, he was also worried that after the Black Tide subsided, there would be another doomsday battle between the sanctuary and the Forbidden Sanctuary. But there were several factors that prompted him to make his decision. First of all, the productivity of the Forbidden Sanctuary is very high, but its population base is sparse, and it cannot afford a large-scale world war. The future development path advocated by the Sanctuary is also very consistent with the needs of the Sanctuary. There is no conflict between the two parties, and the Sanctuary does not have enough motivation to launch a war. Whether it is the Wise Angels or the Forbidden Wizards, they are a group of people who just want to calm down and engage in war. Research people. Secondly, the production materials of the Forbidden Sanctuary are in the hands of the Sanctuary. As long as you reach out and pinch it, the industry in the Sanctuary will stop production. Of course, there is one last point, which is whether the Forbidden Sanctuary can be moved or not. The answer will be available in the next 2 days. If Sanctuary left, then the so-called war would not happen. If Sanctuary does not leave, George will immediately launch a reform in Sanctuary, making it completely under Sanctuary's hands, and becoming Sanctuary's Academy plus research base plus large factory. So it is better to sell one first, and show a candid attitude. When the time comes to adjust the Sanctuary, things will become smoother. In fact, George already damn knew whether or not the Sanctuary could be left. Previously, according to the speculations of the wizards, if you want to leave the Sanctuary, you need to prepare for at least 10 years. These 10 years are the efficiency of the Sanctuary. But according to the information provided by Karl, Eternal Night will be in 3 to 5 years. And just now Ibrahimovic was on the other side, and a message came over. Judging from the situation of the sun, the information provided by Karl is very credible. So the Sanctuary is gone. In the next few days, while observing astronomy and searching for the planet with the Forbidden Wizards, the team at the shelter had academic exchanges here. Of course, the most discussed thing was the matter of asteroids. Wizards don't like drinking or holding banquets. However, the Forbidden Wizards still held a few banquets to show their enthusiasm. But these banquets were a bit nondescript. Everyone was discussing academic issues. The Forbidden Wizards were especially curious about the journals and latest research in the Sanctuary. The portals on both sides were also connected very smoothly, allowing the Forbidden Wizards to have a good tour of the current Sanctuary. A week later, the wizard group lived up to expectations and found the asteroid. Its expected arrival time is in early January 3 years later. That is January of the 6th year of the Blood Moon. And Ibrahimovic also released the news according to the situation of the sun. In 3 to 5 years at most. That is, in the 6-11th year of the Blood Moon, Aloysius will have a chance to open the Stargate and welcome the ancient god. This news made Melosius completely determined. With our current technology, even if we prepare for another 10 years, the flight speed will be very slow. This great exploration will be carried out later. The most important thing now is to modify the Seraph and repair the Dawn Light. The complete sun balance can blast the ancient god into dregs. But now, I'm afraid we can only place our hope on the Dawn Light. Melosius believes that if some of the core components of the solar scale are modified to the Dawn Light, then the Dawn Light will still have a chance to compete with the ancient gods with the help of the power of the sun. As for the success rate, it is equivalent to a small black dragon challenging Nanofari. They are both giant dragons. But the gap is huge. It will definitely succeed, Ibrahimovic said very firmly. It will not fail. I guarantee it with my life. In the following period, the Forbidden Sanctuary joined the Dawn Council represented by Sanctuary as a school city. And the Dawn Council also began to reform the Forbidden Sanctuary. According to George, that is the superstructure, which must serve productivity. This reform is a process of sublation, getting rid of the dross and learning the essence. Certain systems of the Sanctuary still have some reference significance for the wizarding group of the Sanctuary, such as the structure of purely academic fields such as papers. So throughout the process, the team at the shelter was thinking and learning as well. But in the process, those pampered pure-blood wizards also made a lot of mistakes. But within the routine of the shelter, they were kept in obedience. Especially Riscard, who is responsible for this matter. Not only does he know the Forbidden Sanctuary very well, he has also been the leader of high-level acolytes. After arriving at the sanctuary, in addition to black and white wizards, he also had many demons. All kinds of methods can be said to have been honed to perfection. Daphne, the big terrorist leader, can only call herself a student in front of Riscard. How many rounds can these innocent and cute forbidden wizards go through in his routine? Chapter 909 Repairing the Dawn Light. With Riscard and the presence of Charabaeus, the sea-fixing needle, the renovation of the Forbidden Sanctuary went very smoothly. As for those few diehards, at George's suggestion, they were also dealt with. Some stubborn wizards went on a business trip to key school cities such as the Death Mine. These wizards, who left the sanctuary for various reasons, naturally had a look of reluctance on their faces. When they were teaching students below, they were also serious all day long. Dead face. But these arrogant forbidden wizards are very cute. No matter how unhappy they are very rigorous when it comes to academic issues. Therefore, the young apprentices who are lucky enough to study with them are both unlucky and lucky. Another group of stubborn forbidden wizards traveled to various places in the Seven Kingdoms as scholars. During their travels, they experienced the suffering of the people. This was how Anthony changed back then. If they rewalk along the holy road that Anthony once walked, they will surely be washed away and reborn in nirvana through the mortal world. At the same time, the emergence of these wizards will definitely play a great role in the development of magic in various countries. The last group of diehards are actually not diehards at all. They are all bad guys who are in cahoots with the devil. Only a few of these bad guys have the belief in the doomsday. Most of the forbidden wizards are curious about demons and demon gods, just like Riscard. Want to do some research. Those cultists who have doomsday beliefs naturally use it to warn the world. The remaining guys were all incorporated into the Birds of Rest and became battle wizards. These young men originally colluded with the devil. On the one hand for profit, and on the other hand, because they thought the devil was awesome. Therefore, I felt that it was better to enjoy the shade under the big tree. So I went with the demons privately, leaving myself a way out. But now the big tree is so big that it is clear. And the second and fifth sons of God are naturally very knowledgeable, just like what Dead Skin said to them. A gentleman does not stand behind a dangerous wall. They knew exactly what to do. There are not too many real young men. In order to expand the team of fighting wizards, Riscard also threw some guys who didn't like academics or were very interested in dark magic into the ranks of fighting wizards. These more than 1,000 wizards are not only extremely powerful, reaching the level of the resting bird, but they also know how to operate magic towers and floating islands. And when they drove the Forbidden Sanctuary's floating island and joined Elda, Landry and the Holy Empire on the battlefield, their impact on the battlefield was unprecedented. The situation in various places was soon stabilized. It gave the precarious Holy Empire and Landry a shot in the arm. If it weren't for this period, when all-out production was needed, these three theaters would have been able to launch an almost all-out counterattack. As for now, the main job of these combat wizards is to rob demons every month. The Forbidden Sanctuary will provide them with a list. Although the combat wizards may not be able to defeat the Burning Legion on the frontal battlefield, it is not a problem to cooperate with the Rangers to attack the demons' logistics troops. During the renovation process of the Forbidden Sanctuary, production did not fall behind. And after the innovation, the Forbidden Sanctuary became more efficient. There are more than 200,000 high-level intellectuals in the Forbidden Sanctuary, not to mention those high-level apprentices, all of whom are masters and doctors who have been educated for more than 10 or 20 years. Even the civilians in the sanctuary, who have no magic potential, are all serious scholars or senior engineers. When the Forbidden Sanctuary opened its doors and established connections with countries around the world, the influence of these more than 200,000 high-level intellectuals on the entire 7 countries was unprecedented. Under the leadership of Sanctuary, all the power and resources of the world are working hard in one direction. The Sanctuary and other university towns and bases have lived up to expectations. According to the work plan, the transformation of seraphs is much faster than expected. According to the wizards, upgrading these blind angels and adding eyes is expected to take more than a year. Fortunately, the factory in the Forbidden Sanctuary can be upgraded with just one upgrade, able to meet the standards for producing low-level seraphs. Sanctuary will always have a true space force by Blood Moon Year 6. Although many of the factories in the Forbidden Sanctuary were magically modified and repaired by the Forbidden Wizards based on their damaged foundations, their foundations are much better than those built by the Temple survivors. After obtaining the data from the Golden Kingdom, They underwent a comprehensive upgrade, which made the current Sanctuary Magic Industrial Base no less inferior to the original Survivor Base in terms of personnel quality and equipment level. Seraph's research and transformation work will play a great role in the restoration of Dawnlight. There are many technologies and theories that are completely connected between the two. Therefore, the repair work of the Dawnlight has not fallen behind. But the core equipment has not been moved. Because this is the most cutting-edge technology. It requires more experience. And it also needs to refer to some of the technologies of the Sun Balance. In fact, the Forbidden Wizards have been studying the solar balance for more than 300 years. Although it is still impossible to restore a mothership of this level. But the wizards have still come up with a lot of things in the past 300 years. It's just that these things are very primitive compared to the technology used by the solar balance, or in other words, they have taken the wrong path. The Survivor's original design concept for the Dawnlight was undoubtedly very correct. Wizards also began to correct themselves along this path. Many things that are manufactured can be reused. Some things belonging to the solar scale can even be disassembled and used as materials to be used directly on the Dawnlight. According to the progress of the Wizards' day and night work, the last 3% of the Dawnlight's manufacturing work is expected to be completed in the second half of Blood Moon Year 6. Eternal Night may appear in Blood Moon Year 6 to 11. And the repair time of the Dawnlight makes George a little worried. What makes him even worse is that since the Seraph troops are undergoing modifications and upgrades, there are many space tests that need to be carried out before destroying the asteroid. Therefore, now is not the time to launch a general attack on the devil. The demons have not yet seen the power of the Seraph. They have only tasted the power of the Executor. In order to prevent the demons from being frightened, they triggered Eternal Night in advance at all costs. After George regained the Forbidden Sanctuary, he still allowed the Sanctuary to continue. Keep a low profile and bide your time. Sanctuary only sent those battle wizards and some enforcers to stabilize the situation of Elda and Landry, and delay the devil's progress in the Holy Empire to buy Avery time. Therefore, in these 3 years of the Blood Moon anniversary, the two forces of humans and demons maintained the current situation. And only the Holy Empire was slowly being swallowed up. It seemed that Sanctuary had already suffered a lot from the previous Violet War, and it was difficult for them to have the energy to do anything else. There seemed to be only a few colossi, executors, excavated by the Sanctuary during archaeological research. The area of the land of H.L. is gradually spreading, and as the Burning Legion slowly pours in, the power of the devil is gradually growing. According to the words of the demons, there are only a few artifacts you can dig up. But my good brothers have an endless supply. Chapter 910 Recuperation. After the incident in the Forbidden Sanctuary was over, George returned to the Sanctuary and started to develop quietly. The battle conditions in various places were handed over to the generals in each region. The soldiers in the shelter took turns to go to the 3 battlefields to train, and they were able to fight the demons back and forth. The special soldiers lead various guerrillas to wreak havoc in the Devil's Hinterland, or a competitor who assassinated Sayer, Thor and others. The demons suffered some injuries in this year's war, which made them weak in the battles in the Elda and Landry regions. However, in these 2 theaters, the demons also had some outstanding figures. Several of them are demons lurking in the Sanctuary, under the cooperation of internal and external forces. Sayer and Thor are now becoming more and more powerful, and are gradually becoming the great demon lords. In addition, the troops led by these 2 demons had more victories than defeats in the battle against Sanctuary, which made some fallen angels pay more and more attention to these 2 rising stars. At the end of this year, Sayer's boss was successfully killed by the Sanctuary, and she also successfully rose to the position and became the deputy of a fallen angel. On the other hand, although Thor's achievements are not small, because he is a Balrog and belongs to Garokster's old tribe, the demons are afraid of him. But Thor has gathered many Balrogs together, and has vaguely become one of the leaders of the Balrogs. This year, there is a bumper harvest of food in various places, especially in shelters. There is already so much food that no one can eat it all. There are currently only over 1 million people in the valley, but the food produced is enough to support tens of millions of people, plus a swarm of demon spiders, many dragons, and a large number of livestock. This wastes a lot of transportation costs. This year's successful harvest has given the shelter great confidence to accept more and more refugees. It is expected that the shelter's population will expand to 10 million people in the future. What's even more exciting is that since the end of this year, the Sanctuary has begun to gradually apply the Sanctuary's planting technology. Among these planting technologies, there are chemical fertilizers, detoxification, hybridization, soilless cultivation, constant temperature greenhouses, and other technologies that George desires most. It is no longer unattainable to produce 1 ton of potatoes and sweet potatoes per acre. And according to the wizard's estimation, once the rice in the sanctuary is successfully planted in the River of Stars basin, the rice that can be preserved for a long time will also be able to reach 1,000 acres. The terrifying figure of 800 kilograms is produced. But the most terrifying yield is the constant temperature soilless planting technology of the ecological park. Thanks to the construction of ecological greenhouses in the valley over the years, various farm bases in the valley can apply this technology as long as they undergo an upgrade. Although the initial investment is high, 1 acre of land is often equivalent to 10 acres of food. What's even more terrifying is that the ecological park ignores the seasons. Moreover, the ecological park is like spring all year round, and the farmers in charge of the ecological park can live in the attached residences connected to the ecological park. To a certain extent, this also solves many housing problems in cold winter. Many people no longer have to huddle in basements with neighbors and farm animals during the winter. The population of the basin is also increasing. According to the Almanac of the Astrology Library, in the next 10 years, the equator will gradually shift northward, so the Elda and Wind Whisperer basins will gradually become warmer. The local climate in the basin also seems to verify this. Although the winter temperature in the basin has not risen due to the influence of fog, the lowest temperature this winter has not dropped and is still around -30 C. Although the severe cold will affect life, the people who moved into the Wind Speaker Basin, besides the Rodunk people, are the Eldar people, especially those from the east of Rodunk. For them, they have experienced temperatures of -40 C in winter, so they are very adaptable to this environment. For many Rodunk people, the climate in the basin is actually warmer. The winter wind here is very gentle, and there is no scary, white-haired wind. Although the basin can only grow main crops and some vegetables once a year due to winter, the land is extremely fertile and suitable for growing northern crops. Coupled with the heavy snow and cold, insect eggs and viruses in the land will also be affected. So here it is covered with 3 layers of snow, and you can sleep with steamed buns on your pillow. According to the wizard's predictions, although the basin's output may not reach the level of the River of Stars basin, it can far surpass Elda. The current population living in the basin is mainly concentrated in several large mining areas and large cities, with smelting plants and steel plants near large mining areas. The city's population has reached 3 million. In this era, these people who work intensively are undoubtedly very efficient and terrifyingly productive. Manors and castles in various places have also been restored. The combined population of these areas amounts to 5 million, mainly responsible for agricultural production. In the past, many large and luxurious manors and castles were inhabited by nobles, but now they are inhabited by ordinary people who have migrated here. So although this winter is cold, it is very comfortable. As the war spreads, the population of the eastern border of Elda is still migrating towards the basin, and the displaced Landry people are also quietly coming to the basin. Elda and the Moon Kingdom. The population of the basin may reach more than 20 million in the future. Large-scale land reclamation will begin in the basin. The total population of a province-sized area would reach 1/3 of the total population of Eldar, which was unimaginable in the medieval era. But today's agriculture can fully support this population, and the rising industry of the Dawn Alliance also requires a large amount of concentrated productivity. This makes the Wind Speaker Basin bound to become the largest province in the world in the future. In addition to the valleys and basins, the agricultural production in the western region of Rodunk also received an unexpected surprise. The corrupted lands in the western region are undoubtedly not suitable for work, but it is particularly suitable for the animal husbandry industry, the magic spider. Speaking of which, this incident was mainly due to the changes that occurred after Silyak swallowed the Lord of the Abyss. Today, Silyak already possesses a terrifying ability to recombine genes at will, as long as she wanted to. She and her spider queens could even breed across species. This was of course stopped by George. But those newly emerged species of demon spiders, under special transformation, have several advantages that other creatures cannot match. They can eat meat or only eat vegetarian food. The land in the western region is covered with various corrupted plants, as well as a large amount of twisted moss and fungi, all of which can be eaten by the demon spiders. They are now even more popular than cattle and horses. Originally, last year, only businessmen and adventure groups liked these magic spiders, but now they have gradually become a favorite helper of farmers. These new types of demon spiders not only have greater strength and endurance than oxen and horses, but are also more suitable for helping farmers plow fields and transport. What is excreted is also the best material. More importantly, they cleanse the land. Those corrupted lands can often be chewed clean by demon spiders. These demon spiders can even eat stones. What's even more surprising is that these demon spiders that were born to cater to the shelter are not only non-toxic, but the meat quality is also very good. Although it is not as good as pigs, cattle and sheep, it is more nutritious and can be used as food. The dragons in the sanctuary fight against those carnivorous spiders. Chapter 9. 11 stars fall. What you eat is garbage, but what you give birth to is fine meat. The carapace can be processed into various weapons, armor, furniture, daily necessities, and even works of art. There's no reason why wizards shouldn't love them. However, what makes George a little worried is that these new demon spiders are also very powerful in combat according to the wizard's experiments. If these demon spiders are fed fine gold and other minerals for a period of time, their armor and scales will lose strength. It can reach more than 10 times that of steel. According to mathematical models, their potential is far more than that. According to Hilyak, as long as she is given the biological scientific information of the gods, she is confident that she will be able to push through although according to the calculations of the wizards, this kind of reproduction and purification will take at least thousands of generations and tens of thousands of years to evolve into the most perfect species. And it needs to swallow a lot of demons and collect a lot of genes. But George firmly believed in Siljek's words. Therefore, he banned Siljek's evolutionary transformation and prohibited wizards from researching new magic spiders that are resistant to ultra-high temperatures, ultra-low temperatures, vacuums, and radiation. Rusgard is even more worrying. He even proposed that a supercrop can be developed that has no need for air structure or soil and only needs a little bit of weak sunlight to survive in extremely cold or high temperature conditions. Crops growing under, according to his expectation, it might be a fungus. Such application documents were naturally destroyed directly, and under George's order, no one mentioned it. As for whether Siljak will continue her research in the future, and whether it will be successful, that will happen tens of thousands of years after she goes to the abyss. At that time, the shelter was probably no longer afraid of any natural disasters, and the demon spiders could go wherever they wanted to play. George led everyone to focus on farming, and the sanctuary's agriculture developed rapidly. With everyone's efforts, in the 4th year of the Blood Moon, new crops were finally planted in the River of Stars basin. The population near Sun City also gradually migrated to the vicinity of the Golden Inland Sea. Focus on agriculture and water conservancy. After the addition of the sanctuary, the future Seraph force is expected to reach 200 ships and more than 600 executors. This is more than twice as much as previously expected. Anthony and others are even optimistic that flooding may not occur. Lorna's prediction was wrong, but George suppressed this optimistic trend in time. Past historical moments taught him that the obstacles to civilization are not weakness and ignorance, but arrogance. Therefore, various development matters have never been relaxed, and all kinds of intelligence on the front line have been focused on. At the end of the 4th year of the Blood Moon, the demons gradually regained some of their energy and began to dance. The Holy Empire is in danger, and the Moon Kingdom and Charlie have begun full preparations for war, preparing to face the Devil's challenge. At the end of the year, Sanctuary received important news according to reliable intelligence. The demons were studying a raid on the Forbidden Sanctuary. Garvey and others advocated a strategy to make it impossible for the demons to come back on the sea. But in this meeting, George finally made another decision against all the opinions to move the Forbidden Sanctuary to a more secret area with a phase shield in the crater. This work has a great impact on production, and the residents of the Sanctuary Islands also need to move. But this resolution was eventually implemented, and George also adopted Eileen's suggestion to evacuate secretly, regardless of the residents of the islands. She was worried that there were a lot of lurkers in the islands. The personnel structure there is complex and difficult to investigate, and there are pirate strongholds around it, or rather, the residents themselves are pirates. In her opinion, only the Forbidden Sanctuary is the cleanest due to Cherabea's caution. The strategy he has always adopted in the sanctuary is a closed, pure blood structure. This makes it nearly impossible for demons to penetrate. Coupled with the renovation of the sanctuary last year, even if there are still lurkers in the sanctuary, the number is pitifully small, and nothing can be done. But the situation in the islands is different. Eileen and George almost thought of each other. George thought more all the wizards involved in the research on the demon god statue were caught. But within the sanctuary, no area dedicated to the production of the demon god statue was found, and no parts of the demon god statue were found. The clues about how the forbidden wizards got together with the demons also came to an abrupt end with the suicide of some lurkers. Therefore, the only ones who can establish a connection channel between the Forbidden Sanctuary and the devil are the pirates everywhere. The Parthens even put forward a more bold guess: the reason why the residents of the archipelago seem to be normal, and there are no aliens, is because they are all aliens. This whimsical idea was naturally scorned by the white wizards. Especially the wizard leaders in the sanctuary felt that they had been greatly insulted. But this speculation gives a reasonable explanation for the import and export of the demon statue. As for the oaths and various guarantees of the forbidden wizards, they were ignored by George. Those pure-blood wizards stayed at home all day long, and did not usually talk to people on the ground. They knew nothing about the situation in the town. The decision to abandon the residence ushered in a huge debate in the secret meeting at that time. After all, according to the current power of the shelter, even a head-on battle with the demons was not a waste. Cherubim, a new member of the council, even proposed a vote. This incident made George dumbfounded, because the members of the parliament were all Alexander, Nanafali, Palos, Salmon, Alfonso, Gillian, Avali, etc., George's diehard loyalists, and they accounted for the vast majority seats. The debate ended without even a vote, and when George made his decision, it was final. Every year in the Forbidden Sanctuary, there will be a lift-off exercise, and occasionally around the world, all kinds of experiments and tests are put together, and it usually takes a few months for them to come back. Therefore, the secret evacuation of the Forbidden Sanctuary provides a good prerequisite. In the middle of Blood Moon Year 4, Forbidden Sanctuary held such an exercise according to its normal plan. But in this exercise, it was natural that they did not return to the sea again. Many people began to spread rumors that Forbidden Sanctuary had left this world, went to another world. Subsequently, various strange things began to happen one after another in the archipelago. In 4.5 years, the Dawn Blades discovered traces of demons in the Sanctuary Islands. According to reliable information, there may be traces of demons in the cities in the archipelago. There is a group of extremely secretive cultists. The Intelligence Analysis Department even suspected that the entire archipelago was the real base of pirates in the East China Sea. On the surface, the residents in these towns are very simple. But in fact, these towns are pirate villages. And most of the residents there are relatives of pirates, no different from pirates. But Dawn Blade's pursuit came to an abrupt end in October, and a door to the netherworld suddenly appeared on the islands in the sea. Countless Styx armies swept across the entire sea, and the residents of the archipelago became the immortal gods they longed for. They were forever freed from the pain of reincarnation, and became the link between Styx and the main world above the sea, the yin and yang ferryman between the world. The terrifying netherworld tide swept across the east coast of the Shelter continent within a few months. In this Blood Moon Year 5, Landry encountered an extremely difficult battle with the Moon Kingdom's navy. The Haima Islands had to carry out a large-scale evacuation in advance, and Landry's situation collapsed almost overnight. However, the Seahorse Fortress was defended. Valp led the extremists and rebelled against Aloysius at the last moment, blocking the demon army for a month, thus preventing the Seahorse Islands from being attacked from both sides. Avery and others in the south of Seahorse Fortress have time to evacuate. During this period, the High Dawn Council applied several times for Seraph troops to fight, but George suppressed them all. He even went against all opinions and asked the Moon Kingdom's navy to fully shrink its defenses and evacuate to the River of Stars. Give up Landry. In this meeting, there were fewer people with different opinions. The demonic disaster that broke out at the original location of the Forbidden Sanctuary was like a big hand, slapping everyone in the face. Those terrifying netherworld armies, according to Ibrahimovic, are called the Quantum Army. Although it's not great, the Forbidden Sanctuary's current defensive shield technology cannot effectively defend it at all. The result was that the sanctuary was destroyed overnight and became a base for the demons. And the wizards, who have completely become the ghosts, will also create the terrifying nether angels for the demons. Let the demons have that terrifying space force. The news from the demons also verified one thing: Eternal Night is coming. If the Seraph troops are exposed in advance, Eternal Night can appear at least 1 year in advance. The result is unimaginable. The Shelter continent at that time will see a star with a long tail appear in the dim sky and descend to the earth. And the whole world will become purgatory and a paradise for the demons. This is Lorna's dream. Chapter 9:12 Total War. The outbreak of the netherworld demonic disaster posed an unprecedented challenge to the Asylum continent, and also made the Dawn Alliance unite behind George. Taking this opportunity, George completely adjusted the structure of the Dawn Council. Decisions in the future will become increasingly cruel and ruthless, with no room for dissent. He created the office of Grand Consul, and served as the first Grand Consul. From now on, The Parliament will only be responsible for resolutions on people's livelihood and scientific research. Whether the bill is finally passed or not requires the Grand Council to make the final decision. Since then, the Parliament has become an organization like a cabinet. Important decisions regarding the future of the alliance, important directions, as well as related military matters and strategic issues are all made by the Grand Council. In the end, only George has the final say on all bills. Even if the cabinet occasionally has different opinions, he will reject them and let the cabinet reconsider. Under the pressure of this doomsday, the Dawn Alliance gradually moved towards military dictatorship. But it became extremely efficient. The entire league formed a rope, and only Landry became the victim. But in any case, because of Landry's need for shelter, Jillian and others had to cry while trying to please the new emperor. In order to help George realize his hope of helping them regain their country in the future, Landry's navy and the Moon Kingdom's navy had to launch a full-scale war with the Netherworld army without the support of Seraph troops. But the real intention of Sanctuary is to delay for a while, and then guard the defense line of the River of Stars. But the cost was all Landry's navy. Landry's navy was finally destroyed this year, and the Seahorse Fortress was also in danger. But amid the suffocation and secretiveness of the warriors, Landry's refugees had time to evacuate. And with the assistance of the Southern Wasteland Navy, the Moon Kingdom successfully defended the defense line of the River of Stars. The important food base that sheltered the continent was preserved. The destiny of Shelter Continent finally has a real future under the decisions of George and those who trust him most. At the end of the 5th year of the Blood Moon, the power of demons became more and more powerful, and more than a dozen places began to encounter full-scale attacks by demons. But the dark future in Lorna's dream was gone, replaced by the meteor shower in January of the 6th year of the Blood Moon. The shelter's prepared blow caused the falling star to be finally destroyed, and the violent tsunami still swept all the coasts of the eastern and western continents. According to the wizard's reports, the Sanctuary had a lot of luck this time. If it weren't for Seraph's important processing plant, the Forbidden Sanctuary, which survived the Netherworld demonic disaster, and coupled with Seraph's troops, this space has been prepared and rehearsed for many years. So this comet will bring the world to another turning point. Just like in that dream, George took Lorna alone to watch the meteor shower that day, and gave her a small stone. Although this is just a stone, it is more precious than any gem, because it comes from the stars, from the Orbit Nebula that is light years away. It has gone through tens of thousands of years, coming from the distant horizon to this Earth. And just like George, a comet from afar, it has changed the world. In the second half of Blood Moon Year 6, the Dawnlight set sail for the sun. The Seraph troops that had completed their overhaul aimed their cannons at the Earth. The flood has not completely subsided, and the demons who originally thought they could prepare for the eternal night this year have ushered in an unprecedented doomsday. The first thing to be swept away by the sun was the place where the Holy Court was located. However, after the light of the Seraphim shot into the deep mist above the Holy Court, it seemed to shoot into a bottomless abyss. The airborne troops sent there never came back. No news could be transmitted back from the swirling fog, and the place where the Holy Court was located seemed to have become another world. The wizard suspected that a high-dimensional warp point might have appeared where the Holy Court was, and Demetrius suspected that the fog in the sky of the Holy Court had connected to H.L. and the master who controls the will of the H.L. world, Aloysius, is swallowing the light of shadow through the power of H.L. Judging from this situation, the fallen angels may have begun to be gradually sacrificed, and Aloysius should have begun to close the net in the Netherworld and the Abyss. During these 300 years, Aloysius made a lot of arrangements in the Abyss and the Netherworld. Once the net is closed, all the demons who believe in him in the Abyss and the Netherworld will be gradually swallowed up by the light of shadow. These powers would eventually fall into the mouth of Aloysius. The bad news is that once Aloysius succeeds, he will not only become the new ancient god, but more likely the new ancient god, and called his father over. What's worse is that, judging from this situation, Aloysius was able to summon the ancient gods as early as half a year ago. The information Karl secretly provided was accurate. But the good news is that because Aloysius didn't know the true power of the Seraph troops before, he finally adopted this perfect plan. The matter of swallowing the light of shadow is very dangerous for Aloysius. Once it starts, it cannot be stopped. So he has no chance to summon the ancient god for the time being. And Aloysius's wish to become an ancient god may not be realized. On the one hand, because it is impossible to break through the sanctuary with the power of the devil, Aloysius can only become a semi-perfect body. In fact, as long as sanctuary moves quickly enough, There will be no chance of becoming a semi-perfect body in Aloysius' company. But at present, the area where the Holy Empire is located is probably in a dimensional plane. Maybe this is the real Eternal Night. The wizards had previously tried to have the Executors land directly in certain areas of the Holy Empire, only to find that in the area where the Holy Empire was located, the speed of the first universe seemed to be infinite. After the Executors entered, immediately fell and lost contact. It seems that the forbidden doomsday curse cast by Aloysius, which was originally unstoppable, has become impeccable because of the shelter's correct decisions time and time again. If the Seraph troops had been exposed in advance, Aloysius would have had enough time to jump over the wall, sacrifice his own interests, and risk being devoured by summoning his boss. But Sanctuary is now facing another extremely serious challenge. Seraph troops can still be used, but the plan to burn the Holy Court seems to be ineffective. The best way at present is to cut off Aloysius' arm, purify the time and space anchors established in the demonic land, weaken and cut off the connection between H.L. and this world, prevent the fusion of the two worlds, and thereby weaken Aloysius. Loisia's power prevented him from swallowing the light of shadow. In addition, if an army can enter the netherworld or the abyss and stir up chaos there, the light of shadow will gradually break away from Aloysius' shackles, causing Aloysius to suffer a heavy blow. However, judging from the current situation between the abyss and the netherworld, there may only be time to kill one, but it's enough. As for the expedition team, since the Seraphs need to purify the demonic land of this world as quickly as possible, they cannot mobilize too many numbers, because Seraph was more effective against the abyss than the netherworld. George finally chose the abyss. The main force of the expedition team, in addition to some wizards, also needs a force that is not afraid of death and can wreak havoc across the entire abyss like a carpet. On this day, George fulfilled the future he had promised Siljac. Siljac also took the initiative to reach an agreement with George. As long as she is alive, her heirs will not step into any world where the Dawn Alliance exists. And no matter how many years pass after her death, the demon spiders will never invade their holy place. The Star of Sanctuary. Master, whether it is in those 10,000 years or hundreds of millions of years later, my heirs and I will wait for the day you come back. Waiting for your call. George took Siljac's words as shit, because he knew that Siljac would definitely go away after the incident in the abyss. With the current abilities of the demon spiders, they would not be much stronger than the demons in front of the sanctuary. In the second half of the 6th year of the Blood Moon, the foggy maze around the Blue Water City was defeated by the super-wide light of the Seraph, and the decisive battle between the devil and the sanctuary finally began. The troops from sanctuary were divided into two groups, marching all the way to Nidakans, and all the way south from Blue Water City. Among these two armies, in addition to 300 executors, 150 seraphs, floating islands, and the sun god, who can make the army immune to the will of the world, there are only 5 legions with Heavenly Kingdom uniforms, and the number exceeds 15,000. Counting the Lightwing Knights and magic troops, the number reached 200,000. On this day, the war in the south also completely started. Countless demons poured into the Moon Kingdom and the far eastern kingdoms from the Holy Empire. But the troops of the 7 kingdoms had already begun to prepare here many years ago. After the fall of the meteor, the 2 million troops of the 7 kingdoms were assembled on this long front of thousands of kilometers. And today's 7 nations army is no longer what it used to be. On the southern front of the Holy Empire, the total strength of the 7 kingdoms reached 2 million. Among these 2 million people, all the main forces were those who had fought with the main forces of the demons in Elda, Landry, and the Holy Empire. The person who passed. They were once mercenaries and recruits, but now they have grown up. They are equipped with talisman equipment, various magic weapons, floating islands, 100 executors and 50 seraphs. It can be said that the overall strength of this force can be compared to the force between Sanctuary and the Burning Legion in the decisive battle at Violet 4 years ago. It's just that the battle line straddles the border between the Moon Kingdom and the Far East, making it impossible for the troops to form a sharp knife like the main force of the shelter. But it was enough to withstand the Burning Legion. Chapter 913 Requiem Angel the Real Eternal Night. The 2 armies sheltered in the north encountered far more violent wars in this Devil's Land than those in the south. Now in this Devil's Land, the devils can already summon the rolling meteors. Every falling meteor is a huge black devil. The sky is dark, and the red moon is in the sky no matter day or night. There is no doubt that the blood moon is always present in these areas, and the sky is gradually being swallowed up by eternal night. The resistance of the Burning Legion is extremely strong, and there seems to be an endless supply of demon troops. However, under the targeted attacks of the Seraph troops, All the demon troops gathered will be swept away once the advanced troops discover the node of the portal. The next moment, it will be illuminated by light from the sky, and the entire land will be cleansed. The troops in the shelter seemed to be marching with the dawn. Wherever they passed, the sun would gradually rise over the purified land. But when the two troops in the shelter crossed thousands of kilometers in a month and entered the eastern border of Violet and Rotunk respectively, they encountered something very strange. The space became darker and darker, and the trajectory became increasingly weird, and the wizards discovered that Seraph's orbital strikes were gradually becoming ineffective. It seems that these areas are shrouded in an extremely strange position. Some wizards even boldly speculated that light would slow down when passing through the sky in these areas. But when the Seraph troops came to the ground, their power was still there. It seems that the higher the altitude in these areas, the weirder the situation. But there is nothing unusual on the surface. After testing, it was difficult for Seraph troops to take off here. But all in vain. The demons can only delay it for a little while. In less than half a year, nearly 10 million square kilometers of land were gradually recovered during Sanctuary's comprehensive counterattack. The darkened demon city in the north fell. And in the south, Sanctuary troops also reached Jinjin Mountain. The darkness in the northern sky has slowly faded, replaced by day. In the north of Jinjin Mountain, it is daytime, while in the south, it is night. In this battle of Jinjin Mountain, those who guarded Jinjin Mountain became demons. But they only lasted for less than 3 days before being defeated at a stroke. Since then, all time and space anchors that can be used by Aloysius have been destroyed. In the end, the only area left was this once glorious ancient empire. On this day, Ibrahimovic also sent back 2 messages. It had regained control of the power of the sun. The Stargate is closing. But he discovered that the Stargate had long been damaged and could not be crossed by the ancient gods. When Ibrahimovic used the power of the solar space station to scan the shelter star, he found that part of the entire shelter star had been occupied by an extremely weird stance. Shrouded. Previously, this stance had been centered around the position of the Holy Empire and spread outwards. But later it gradually faded away, currently staying in the area where the Holy Empire is located. The data obtained by Ibrahimovic verified an inference made by the wizards. The area where the Holy Empire is located has become a subplane. But the consequences are temporarily unknown. Go there and check it out as soon as possible. I'm trying to use the power of the sun to destroy that position, but I can't guarantee success. There was deep concern in Ibrahimovic's words. The troops from Sanctuary passed through Jinjin Mountain on this day because of the situation in the north. The Sanctuary fell quickly amidst the overwhelming attack, catching the demons by surprise. The moment the Sanctuary troops entered Sword-Suppressing Mountain, the demons' southern army also began to panic. The main force of the Burning Legion is trying its best to retreat towards the north, but it is being delayed by the troops of the 7 nations in the south. In some areas, the troops of the 7 countries have begun counterattacks, and the countdown to the day when the demons will be driven back to their hometowns has begun. As the Sanctuary troops entered the Holy Empire, George and others also discovered that there was no daylight or fog here. There are stars shining in the sky, but the trajectory of the stars is even weirder. Those stars were like a mess, connecting into tracks in the sky. It's like using the camera to perform delayed exposure. This seems to indicate that the light of stars slows down after entering this area. Although the energy weapons of Seraph's troops are still effective, they are unable to rise to high altitudes, which shortens their attack range to within a few dozen kilometers. According to the wizard's tests, the first cosmic speed here has become infinite, or in other words, although the value of the cosmic speed here far exceeds the third cosmic speed, no instrument here can reach it, flying out of the sky at this speed. Black territory. The word flashed in George's mind. But the forbidden wizards seem to have another explanation for this phenomenon. They call it the Requiem Angel. This is a magic that can imprison the entire world in the records of the Forbidden Sanctuary. According to the records of the Forbidden Sanctuary, when certain worlds are invaded by subdimensional demons, there is a slight probability that this phenomenon will occur. This is a 7-god level miracle. People in the imprisoned world will play with mud on the surface of the planet forever, until the resources of the planet are exhausted, and people will never be able to step into the galaxy. It turns out this is the real eternal night, according to the wizard's research on this place. Theoretically, there should be daylight in this so-called eternal night. But things are a little strange here. Sometimes the earth is bright, shining with light, but the background of the sky is black. There is no doubt that Aloysius used the power of H.L. to build his lair into a sanctuary. In other words, this is the real fortress of gods and demons in this world. This area where the Holy Empire is located will most likely be changed forever. However, The wizards are extremely excited. They believe that this place will become a great testing ground. Perhaps in the future, the Dawn Alliance will be able to turn this magic into technology, used as a weapon. After Sanctuary's entire force destroyed the first demon fortress on the road, the resistance displayed by the demon's forces was very weak. Judging from the overall situation of the war, the main force of the demon's burning legion seems to be anxiously fighting the 2 million troops in the Far East and 7 kingdoms at the border of the Moon Kingdom. Unable to withdraw too many troops, Sanctuary's troops divided into 5 groups, destroyed various demon fortresses in the Holy Empire, and searched for possible special nodes. 4 of the 5 armies include the 4 archangels Alexander, Sariah, Irene, and Cherubaeus respectively. Although in this eternal night, they cannot use the power of the Light of Dawn to use the God of War, spears, and other destructive moves, but the Light of Dawn can use them as a medium to protect the troops they lead from the fallen angels, mobilizing the power of the Light of Shadow and using the Master Level Dark will strike. As for George, he was in the same situation as Sariah and others. After dividing his troops, he led the strongest team directly towards the location of the Holy Court. Although the troops were divided into 5 groups, due to the existence of the floating island, these 5 groups of armies were like one large army. No matter which group of armies the demons gathered together, it was like encountering the main force of the Sanctuary. In these battles, the demons were as difficult to resist as they were against the landing force that invaded the planet's surface. The most effective method of obstruction is guerrilla warfare, and their enemies. The enemies call themselves army, but they can all fly. What makes the demons even more desperate is that the troops in these sanctuaries are protected by the Light of Dawn. When the archangels spread their wings, the sky above their troops will change from eternal night to day. Save them from the will of darkness. Although this makes it impossible for the troops in the shelter to separate into small groups to clean up, or to carry out encirclement, annihilation and pursuit. It is enough, because the power of Seraph can destroy any army. Although they cannot fly high here, their attack radius is only a few dozen kilometers. The demons' troops had to be baptized with low power. But this level of devastating blow was still unbearable for the demons. Often, as long as the demons are discovered by the detector, in a salvo of Seraph, the target will be turned into smoke and dust within a few kilometers around the target in a dazzling light. Terrifying shock waves can often hit more than 10 kilometers away, causing the earth to tremble. No matter what kind of magic arrays those demon fortresses use, they cannot last long under such a force that is like a blow from the will of the world. And in those demonic cities, where the magic array is not stable enough, the entire city will often be wiped out after a single salvo. Although the body structure of those demons is far different from that of humans, making them not afraid of high temperatures and high radiation. All matter within a kilometer of the core will evaporate instantly. Even ghosts will collapse in the riot of this energy. This makes it almost impossible for the demons to form an effective defense. Later, those demons no longer even dared to station themselves in any city or fortress, and their morale was extremely low. Chapter 9:14 Damn Bugs. As the demons were defeated again and again, it was no longer possible for them to form an effective defense. The battle in the north had completely defeated the demon spirit. In the Holy Empire, after being crushed by the Sanctuary troops several times, there were almost no more resistance. The only thing that can even remotely stop Sanctuary's troops is the Ghost Army. But there are too many wizards in the Sanctuary army, and even the knights in the army can release terrifying magic, without the cooperation of other ghost demons. These ghosts are like going into battle naked. And the heavenly armed forces, the army of heroic spirits, and the priests are the most restrained forces in the underworld. Tens of thousands of years ago, when there was no shelter in this world, the Holy Court and the Nether Hell were beaten to pieces by the Holy Court. But now, the army faced by the Nether Hell has not only one Holy Court, but also several unclear wizards. After several battles, the Netherworld troops were defeated and fled, not daring to confront the Sanctuary troops again, only dare to harass. Occasionally, these ghost demons who cannot eat flesh and blood will sneak attack on the defeated H.L. troops. The ghost troops are restrained by the power of heaven, but they are extremely restrained by the H.L. troops. This makes the battle situation of the entire Holy Empire more and more chaotic, and the demons, their defense is getting worse. In the first month after entering the Empire, George's troops had already crossed more than 2,000 kilometers and gradually approached the heart of this ancient empire, because they only attacked those cities or fortresses where nodes might exist, and never pursued or encircled them. The speed of their advance was many times faster than the previous advance on Violet. The demons had no city to defend, but the Sanctuary was advancing with the city, making it not only impossible for the demons to defend, but also difficult to counterattack. As George goes deeper, he encounters fewer and fewer demons. Along the way, there were defeated armies of demons everywhere. It wasn't until they approached the former imperial capital that they gradually encountered the devil's elite troops. It seems that the main force of the demons in the south finally got rid of the entanglement of the Seven Kingdoms alliance and returned to the capital regardless of the cost. Black demons and red demons filled the sky, and demons flying in the sky covered the sky like clouds. But this time, the demonic forces encountered by the sanctuary seemed to be not only the Burning Legion, but also the many twisted, deformed, and difficult to kill chaotic species. They all come from the abyss. It seems that a gate to the abyss has been opened near the royal capital. What's worse is that the area hundreds of kilometers near the royal capital has been shrouded in a deep fog. The environment here is exactly the same as the original Golden Desert, which makes it impossible for the Seraph troops to carry out accurate long-range baptism. Occasionally, after a wave of tentative baptisms covered it, the wizards would detect energy fluctuations dozens of kilometers behind the floating island. In the most dangerous situation, when Seraph was shooting in the direction of the distant royal capital, George and others saw the shining light in the sky nearby, and then felt the terrifying shock wave. The invincible Seraphs have become difficult to use in this strange space-time area. It seems that they can only help Sanctuary hit here. The only ones that can be used unscrupulously are the Executors. Although their cannonballs often don't know where they will be launched, they can still clean up visible targets. Time and space are tortuous. But light and cannonballs, the trajectory is also tortuous. The whole scene is like inserting a fish into the deep sea, beating the big demon lords and demon statues so that they dare not show their heads. As for the fallen angels, they are long gone. But as George knew, it seemed that only Carl had a chance to escape Aloysius' clutches. But the shelter also encountered difficulties. They broke through to the royal capital several times but failed. During these attacks, Sanctuary's troops not only seemed to be marching in a maze, but also encountered waves of demonic troops. Sanctuary did not dare to throw grenades like Seraph under its feet. Only conventional weapons can be used in combat. During these battles, the troops of the Sanctuary also discovered that the fallen angels used the power of the Dark Will to tear apart the time and space near the royal capital in a sad and crazy way, which caused the crack leading to the abyss. More and more, which makes those demons everywhere. Later, demons will crawl out from inside the floating island, or even from certain rooms and bedrooms. Although most of these things that crawled out were lemurs. They were extremely disgusting. Wizards even worried that these things would crawl out of Seraph one day. This forced the troops in the Sanctuary to retreat to the safe area during several breakthroughs. It also made it difficult for the shelter troops to rest, making the floating island a little restless. Until one day, when a wizard was peeing in the middle of the night, he suddenly saw a wild abyss spider eating demons in the small square in front of the wizard tower on the floating island. Although it was soon crawled out by another one, kill the demon. But after that day, the shelter troops discovered more and more wild spiders near the royal capital. After that, the bugs chasing the abyss demons began to appear everywhere, as if they were wild animals here. If you look into the distance with any telescope, you will see those cute bugs chasing the screaming lemurs. Spider webs began to appear everywhere, covering the woods and hills at an unimaginable speed within a few weeks. And in the spider web, there are spider eggs everywhere. Each of these spider eggs is as tall as half a person. And what crawls out is not a little devil spider at all, but a half-sized demon spider. What scares the demons even more is that it only takes a few days for these spiders to grow as big as a pony. Moreover, they are extremely resistant to elements, and every demon spider can give birth to babies. They can even lay eggs directly in demons' bodies. And those half-human demon spiders that occasionally appear and can cast spells can release a group of black buns. Once a demon is contaminated, even a black demon will be parasitized by the parasitized one within a few days. The things in the body absorb the magic power in flesh and blood. And then the new demon spiders will crawl out of their chests. These demon spiders born from the bodies of black demons are born with a lot of magic, and they can easily kill several lemurs with their half-human height. As they grow up a little, the red devils become their prey. Even the chaotic species and ghosts are in their recipes. The whole battle situation began to become weird. The demons began to curse the damn abyss alien demon, while systematically cleaning up those damn bugs. But there were more and more of them. They even started to attack demons in an organized way. Until the end, every time the shelter entered the maze area, the cobwebs and bugs were already densely packed, all over the mountains and fields, everywhere. And the demons who cleaned them became fewer and fewer. The abyss was already empty of troops, and there was an army of seraphs and wizards assisting them. So this was originally a sneak attack on the devil's rear. Therefore, the demise of Abyss was expected by Sanctuary. What made everyone look a little weird was that none of the demon spiders seemed to have a leader. It will attack anyone it sees. But the shelter has a large number of spider queens, so the situation can be controlled. The demon spiders are also being gradually gathered. But what makes the wizards feel very strange is that compared to the spider queen, the wild spiders are more afraid of George. It seems that in their eyes, George is their master. One day, the sanctuary troops saw a group of broken executioners covered in cobwebs in the wilderness. It seemed that it accidentally got into the cracks in time and space, and returned to this world from the abyss. In addition to this team of executors, there was also a group of spider silk cocoons. After the knights cut the cocoons open, they discovered the shelter wizards and priests sleeping inside. With so many big things and so many people, they would never accidentally emerge from the cracks in time and space, unless someone cast some magic. Boss, Celiac has escaped. After the wizards woke up, they took out a colorful egg, and said, "Our large army has arrived at the abyss gate leading to the holy court from the abyss. But when she broke through the gate, she kidnapped several seraphs from our expeditionary force and then ran away. She said she would study it and asked you to wait. It will definitely make you look good." George took the egg, feeling a little disappointed. He could no longer contact Celiac. The two people were not disconnected mentally, but the distance between them was too far. "Baby, you still ran away. Run away. Don't let me catch you." George remembered today's date, March 19th. The 7th year. The day when Celiac entered the abyss was January. The 6th year. After 1 year and 3 months, the abyss was covered with spider webs under the claws of the demon spiders. The troops from the sanctuary also entered the royal capital on this day and came to the gate of the holy court. Chapter 9:15 The Light of Shadow. All demon fortresses, demon cities, and large demon strongholds have been destroyed as of today. The fog has gradually disappeared, which means Aloysius' failure. But the sun in the distance still has not risen. This seems to indicate that mankind has not yet won the final victory. The sanctuary troops completely surrounded the holy court. George withdrew his gaze towards the red moon. Under the shining of the stars, he stared at the great temple in front of him in a daze for a long time. He had thought about the holy court countless times, that he would come here to meet the Vic White or the Pope named Alexander the 16th. And every time I think about it, the great temple in front of me is brilliant and lively. Maybe I can even take a look at the Pope and chop a durian for myself. Today it remains grand but empty. The dawn knights continued to pass by both sides of George and poured into the great temple of the manor. They stood beside the huge stone pillars, like sculptures. In Irene's complicated eyes, George slowly climbed up the stairs. Is the last demon still staying here, Vic White? Or the Pope? Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. In that final devouring, Aloysius will definitely eat all his clones and become a human being. At this time, George had already seen the grand door open in front of him. His hammer suddenly disappeared. And then, there was a gem on the wristband, a star fragment. A piece of text suddenly appeared in front of George's eyes. The CEO will face a worrying choice. But Dawnlight believes that George will make a decision that will benefit the world. The Light of Dawn will hand over all his power to you. And you will be invincible and able to mobilize all the power of the world with the help of the Warnworth Bracer. Use the power of the world to aim at the shadow. Just give it a try. When the shadow light collapses and dies, Aloysius will die too. Both you and the Light of Dawn will lose their significant other forever. But this world will usher in a true rebirth. George was stunned. He suddenly felt that he was integrated with the Light of Dawn, and became like the Light of Dawn, unable to be locked or attacked by any force. But George felt that a pair of eyes from afar had been watching him, and those eyes came from all dimensions and time and space. George suddenly had a feeling that if he turned on the perspective of Dawnlight at this time, he would be able to see him in that dream and lock his body in any dimension in time and space at the same time. And as long as you hold an astral fragment in your arms, rush into his body and detonate the fragment, you can die with him. But first, he must fly near the Star Gate. Someone is already one step ahead of him. George pursed his lips and stepped into the grand open door of the holy court. In the main hall of the great temple, a thin white-robed priest was standing there, looking at the high platform behind the altar in a daze. On the high platform, all the statues that originally belonged to the 7 gods were gone. Instead, there was a deep black void. George stopped and stood beside the priest, looking at the dark void ahead. I suddenly had a sense of enlightenment. In this void, there should have been a nebula and stars. And after the two are combined, there is the real light of the astral world. The faceless men are called the devourers of the world's will. And the gods are called the protectors. The light of the astral world is a special kind of world will. In the records of the Golden Kingdom, the gods describe the light of the astral world as a singularity called a high-dimensional automatic cell machine. It can simulate the evolution of the universe, so it can be seen for thousands of years at a glance. Know everything you don't know. With the power of God. The true astral light does possess the power of God. In other words, they are the gods of creation, because they themselves are the will of the worlds. The worlds that are being nurtured. Once this world is born, they will slowly expand and eventually form a new multiverse. George suddenly understood why a small astral fragment could accommodate the goblins and become their new world. I also understand the dispute between the faceless men and the protectors. Doesn't the person who swallows the light of the astral world possess a new world and become the god of that new world? And aren't the protectors protecting these new worlds that are being nurtured? Maybe the HL, the netherworld and other secondary planes come from this. It's just that they failed to evolve successfully, and eventually became the multi-layered abyss and 7HLs connected together. And Aloysius is the leader of a small dimension in HL. Therefore, the faceless one is indeed the god of demons. It seems that you are indeed not lying. You are indeed the son of the ancient god. However, there will be no more nebulae in this void. Aloysius, you have lost. George turned his head and looked at the old man beside him. At this moment, he suddenly opened his mouth. This old man looked so much like me. Aloysius. The old man suddenly raised his head sadly. No one has called me this name for a long time. Maybe I should have thought that the only one who can defeat me is me. At this moment, the two people chosen by the light of shadow and the light of dawn finally stood together under the intertwining of fate. They came from different worlds, and were called by the light of shadow and the light of dawn. 300 years ago, one was active in the abyss, HL and netherworld, and became the master of the three realms. Then, he followed the mist. He came to this world and began to sleep during the first blood moon, waiting for the time to wake up after the world was shattered. It has been sleeping for more than 30 years, and the other one suddenly woke up 8 years ago. Sometimes, they would not be able to tell who they were, but the person who woke up was always thinking, and knew exactly what Aloysius was thinking. No, maybe he shouldn't be called Aloysius. He's Alexander. George suddenly felt dizzy, and he suddenly understood why Elizabeth said that he had become younger when she saw him for the first time. I also know why Dawn of Light has always been afraid of changing jobs. Because the light of dawn knows that he and the light of shadow have chosen the same person. Only by choosing this person can we see the secret hidden deep in his heart. Among all the archangels, Irene knew this secret. In other words, this was her idea. George finally understood why Irene had always been so afraid of him, and why she had always believed that she would definitely do bad things. Indeed, it is such an exciting and interesting thing to break through those worlds. But, Chapter 9:16 Ibrahimovic. The Apocalypse. I was wrong. Aloysius suddenly felt a little sad. To develop yourself, it is better to farm. If I were not trying to save trouble and be willing to study knowledge and follow the scientific and technological stream, then this world would have been over long ago. Dot! Come with me. It's not too late, the ancient god is coming. Only if we join forces and devour the light of shadow and the light of dawn can we have a chance to kill it. Stop making trouble. Brother, there's no need to tell me the consequences. George pursed his lips, thinking of Ibrahimovic. He fiddled with the wristband on his arm and raised his hand to aim at the light of shadow on the altar. I will not become the new ancient god. I will not make everything that happened near the sun meaningless. The gems on the wrist guards lit up, and time suddenly stopped. The void behind the altar quietly disappeared in ripples with Aloysius' sigh. In the blink of an eye, only George was left on the high platform. In front of him was the dilapidated altar and the collapsed statue of the seven gods. It seems that with the collapse of the light of shadow, the traces of him and Aloysius in all dimensions have been erased. The knights looked at each other in confusion. The shadow light and Aloysius were as if they had never appeared before. From beginning to end, George seemed to be talking to himself. The archangels flew over with puzzled expressions. Xiao! George! Are you okay? Soraya landed from the sky. Who are you talking to? He is talking to himself, Eileen said in the sky. I knew that he was not Morpheus or Alex. Then it must be Aloysius. He just gave himself to killed. You know nothing. George shook his head, rarely saying anything back. He looked at the collapsed stone statue not far away with some disappointment. Hurry up and open the door to the kingdom of heaven. And let the wizard see if there are any messages. Something like coordinates. Under the call of the archangels, Ripples slowly appeared on the wall behind the statue of the great temple, which was carved with countless scenes of heaven. Then, a huge passage was revealed in front of everyone's eyes. At this moment, the wall of the Holy Court is exactly the same as the wall of the Temple of Heroes. As long as you step into it, you will be in heaven. But this heaven is different from the one in the sanctuary. It is a vast starry sky. And in the background of the starry sky, there is a huge sun. The sun is wrapped in a position and looks like a huge circular honeycomb. But many areas of the honeycomb appear to have been damaged, and occasional flares can be seen coming from holes in the honeycomb. Dawnlight should be close to the sun, but it is too small, only 2 kilometers away, so it cannot be seen at all. It's a projection. Don't worry. It's all fake, Anthony said, leading the wizards into the door. At this moment, they seemed to be stepping on the starry sky, or in other words, the background of the ground under their feet. Also the starry sky. Then, when the wizards called, ripples appeared in the air, and the crystal arrays hidden here were called out one by one. The wizards got busy, and George and others also walked in. Although everything in front of you is the background, the entire heaven is like a huge projection room, refracting the distant background. Here you can even use an astronomical telescope to directly observe the distance. No telescope is needed at all, because the picture is already enlarged. And everyone also found that their own spirits were unable to explore the boundaries of the Tao Heavenly Kingdom. It seems boundless here. Or in other words, it has been affected by the eternal night. It has become a strange space-time area. If there is any high-dimensional creature coming out near the sun at this time, then it can arrive here instantly in that high dimension. So the sun looks like this. Soraya's eyes revealed the light of admiration. Why does it look like a big honeycomb? It's so ugly. Aaron nodded in agreement. George shook his head, came to Anthony's side. Everyone was busy looking for the coordinates near the crystal array. But Anthony was looking blankly at the sun in the distance, because he knew that the coordinates were something that did not exist at all. It was just a rhetoric that George used to stabilize people's hearts after all. He had already seen the situation in that star gate. Look there. Anthony pointed to an area near the sun. It was a strange area. The distance from the sun was the same as the distance between Venus and the sun. But this area is very big. It still looks very small. But proportionally, it is as big as Jupiter. It is rotating around the sun and looks extremely special. Just like a spherical starry sky that is constantly rolling. And all the stars in this spherical starry sky are stars. And they come from the far end of the universe. It is a stargate. A special kind of wormhole, Anthony said. Although our sun is a nuclear fusion reaction, the mass-to-energy conversion rate is very low. But it is too big. So big that it makes every second a clock will lose 5 million tons of mass. This is equivalent to consuming 5 million tons of antimatter energy every second, Anthony said with some sigh. The giant structure that wraps the sun can use all these energies, although it cannot be fully utilized. As long as part of the energy is focused on a point, it can open a small wormhole. And as long as we continue to fill this small wormhole with foreign matter, the wormhole will be like a balloon, stabilized by the air inside, the foreign matter. After that, the power of the star will once again expand a little, add foreign matter, and repeat the process. Then the wormhole will become larger and larger, and eventually become a highway for advanced civilizations in the universe seeing stars. That special star in the door, you must have better eyesight than I do. In the constantly rolling stargate, there are many stars rolling with the rolling of the stargate. Among them is a special small star that is constantly rolling through the stargate at an extremely fast speed, rolling much faster than those rolling stars. And on that rolling sphere it is getting bigger and bigger. Ibrahimovic, how is the repair of the Dyson ball going? George closed his eyes and called for Evie, but found that he could not summon it. Answer me. I know you can hear it. Can you close the stargate? Or use the focus power to kill the faceless man? So big. How about it? Can it be repaired? The reason why I got there is because I am the apocalypse. I am a fragment of the astral world. I am the largest fragment of the astral world at that moment. I am the ultimate weapon against the faceless men. It's the law of cause and effect. The reason why the ancient god is immortal is that he exists in all time and space in all dimensions. But if there is a person who can touch any time and space, he can collapse against him. I am his deadly poison. The star suddenly turned dark. A wizard suddenly shouted, "We are protectors. This is my mission. We will not let lower civilizations suffer the disasters caused by the faceless ones because of the mistakes of the Kashia people. George, pass it on. Goodbye by fate." George closed his eyes, walked out slowly, walked into the main hall of the Holy Court, and looked at the broken glass window. The dark horizon outside the window began to gradually turn white. The sun in the distance slowly rose, and the light of dawn fell on the earth. Before he knew it, George was in tears. On this day, the night of the old world came to an end with the rising of dawn. This day is the first day of the first year of the new century. Chapter 9:17 New Century. In the 8th year of the new century, the great changes in Sanctuary have finally come to an end, and the entire world has entered a truly new era. The political, industrial, agricultural, educational and other systems around the world have been improved. With the popularization of knowledge, people around the world have productivity also began to gradually synchronize with the shelter. The only thing that makes George and the others a little worried is that in this new century, there are already all the conditions for a population explosion driven by the forbidden agricultural technology. The average grain yield per moo in many areas has reached more than 3,000 kilograms. When there is a breakthrough in photosynthesis technology, the yield of this field will probably rise in line with the theoretical figure of 10,000 kilograms per moo. It has been more than 8 years since the blood moon ended. It can even be said that 16 years ago, many people in the Moon Kingdom, Southern Wilderness, Iberia, Elda and other regions lived a good life. Especially this winter when there is nothing to do. After everyone has finished planting mushrooms, they will plant children. But the population is only 1 billion. And the new generation of children are also a bit strange, mainly because the leaders advocate freedom of love, to unite all races. In this freedom of love, intermarriage between various races and humans has been going on for many years after all. Humans have the largest base. These races include dragons, elves, goblins, blood descendants, wolf descendants and even demons and spiders. This makes everyone either unable to have children or giving birth to mules. Only the dragon clan is the most awesome. And their offspring can still continue to reproduce the next generation. Even grass horses and grass sheep can hack and give birth to babies with horns and scales. Besides the dragons, it's George. He has the blood of the abyss. And his genes are naturally extremely powerful. For the sake of the next generation, forbidden scholars have focused on studying biological technologies in the temple. And with the Dragon Clan's reference, cross-species reproduction technology is likely to achieve a breakthrough within decades, and became popular within 100 years. In the 24th year of the new century, those born in the first year of the blood moon are already 32 years old. They have sheltered the world in the orbit of the planet, and established the first large-scale space base. This space station is no longer an energy platform, but is completely powered by the Alliance. A space base built with its own productivity. It marks the sheltered world entering the space age. The Asylum world has developed technology crazily, hoping to sail to the vast starry sky as soon as possible. Having experienced the apocalypse, they have a strong sense of urgency. And the demon spiders that flew away with Celiac were like a sharp sword suspended above the head of the shelter world, always alerting everyone that if they let down their guard, the shelter would become the next holy court. According to the records of the Kashia Protoss, the Titan system is now in an era of civilizational depression. The Level 3 civilization that once ruled the Titan system and the Interstellar Parliament withered in the last natural disaster war. And in that civil war among them, it turned into a piece of loose sand. The sheltered world is considered by the Protoss to be the handful with the most potential among all the new generation civilizations. And it is also the civilization that can definitely sell planets and star systems. Therefore, the Alliance can't wait to join this lively galactic event. Shine the light of dawn on this galaxy. Protect weak civilizations. And train those racists. To welcome the Zerg natural disaster that was predicted to sweep across the entire Titan system in the future. Take on the responsibility of protectors. Just like George said, Shelter Continent is uniquely endowed with not only the technology of the gods, but also a damn Dyson sphere. Isn't this a big gift package from the Fallen Father at the beginning? Everyone is starting from the same starting point. Just a few declining alliances. Damn it! Get Shiriak back to me. George hugged his grandson. Said, this year, he is still very young. Hack that bitch Celiac. In the 300th year of the new century, the Sanctuary Alliance has completely mastered all the survivors' original technologies. Space bases have been established in orbit on the gaseous planets. The 2 desolate planets in the habitable zone that are likely to breed gods have also began to be developed. This field has already begun to be planted in space. In the orbit of the gaseous planet, there are agricultural, industrial and biological experimental stations everywhere. The total population living in heaven has reached 0.3%, close to tens of millions. the Dyson sphere really began to be slowly studied and restored. At present, it can only use 7% of its capabilities, but it is still enough for the Alliance to use it to collect a large amount of antimatter energy. Stars emit positive particles. The Alliance is gradually moving towards the second-level civilization. As fast as a rocket, with atomic-level strong interaction armor and a strong interaction color charge space detector that can simply use curvature technology to perform acute angle turns at high speeds, has also started manufacturing and sent to the Little Fox star. After these water drops were sent out, the Forbidden Sanctuary finally completed its technological innovation this year. You can use the 20% of the speed of light to sail in the starry sky. These forbidden scholars, who were extremely eager to explore the new world, set sail for the Little Fox star with George's blessing. To be honest, Riscard, Melosius, ahem. George was still very young. Isn't the technology of cross-species reproduction a bit too perverted? Where are you really going to kill the fox? Melosius looked at the group of Austin standing next to George, who were either tall and burly, or slim and hot, with horns and dragon scales. He patted George on the shoulder and said solemnly, "Take care of yourself. Bullshit grass fox." Since the breakthrough in the biotechnology that the Crater Temple has been studying, genetic technology has become very mature, protecting the world and truly achieving the integration of all races. And wasn't the first person in the world to be a fox. George, there are only a few thousand dragons left in the world today. All races have been assimilated by humans. However, the genes of the dragon family are still extremely powerful, and scholars also advocate retaining the genes of the dragon family, because these descendants of dragons are naturally resistant to radiation, high temperature, and cold, and can even stay in a vacuum for a period of time. And it's super long-lived. This is very conducive to interstellar navigation. Unlike Melosius, Aji and Martin joined the second group heading towards the stars with a dream for this dream. They have been frozen for a long time. Boss, don't worry. I will spread our seeds to every corner of the Titan system. George held his little great-great-granddaughter Tausi, sat on the chair, and nodded weakly. Lorna came over and massaged George's shoulders. Her lifespan is almost over, but she still looks like she is 18 years old. At this time, it is already the year 4629 of the new century. Sanctuary has passed through the Stargate and successfully colonized 7 or 8 star systems with habitable stars. The entire country is connected like a constellation. Sanctuary is now having more and more contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. But among all the civilizations we have encountered, the most developed ones are still in the Steam Age. But in Sanctuary, during these 4,000 years, the technological explosion has not ended yet. Or in other words, it has just begun. Chapter 918 New Century, Finale. With the information of the gods, what restricts the development of civilization is no longer the basic theory of science and technology, but productivity. Judging from the Alliance's latest space projects, a project often spans several centuries. The transformation of a habitable star will take thousands of years. As for the Dyson sphere, just repairing it will take 3,000 years. In the space fleet, there are more than 5,000 city-sized battleships with pure silver appearance. The manufacturing of various sky bases and various spacecrafts has caused the satellites around the gaseous planets to be developed. Each of these construction projects is extremely huge. So according to scholars' calculations, each sky project will almost collect a moon. The construction of the Stargate on the first colonial planet is expected to require a solar ring to support it, to tie a thin rope around the waist of the sun. All the planets in the star system need to be tied together, and meteorite belts are all collected. Of course, once it is established, hundreds of billions of people can live there. This project will take more than tens of thousands of years. According to scientists' estimates, the Alliance can be considered a Tier 2 civilization because of the Dyson sphere, a gift from the gods. An obvious technological sign after Level 2 civilization is the mastery of the curvature engine. At present, the shelter has mastered this technology, and the maximum speed is 1.25 c. Above this, the faster the speed, the energy consumed will increase exponentially. According to theory, when the speed reaches a certain level, the surrounding space will be bent into a circle. In other words, it will no longer be possible to accelerate. Therefore, jump technology, star jumping technology, and highways such as stargates must be established. After this Level 2 civilization, the development of civilization will enter a slower process, according to the mathematical models of scholars. By that time, the unit of century will gradually become the same as the year. Exploration is also an extremely long process. This galaxy is so big, with 400 billion stars. It took the gods more than 80 million years to enter the galaxy. Sanctuary has some of the Protoss's physical and biological technologies, and may be slightly shorter. And this first real war has been anticipated by Sanctuary. Sanctuary has found its first little brother. According to the detectors sent by Sanctuary through the Stargate to the distant place, they may have developed more than 700,000 years earlier than here. But civilization has experienced a reincarnation. This reincarnation spanned more than 700,000 years, which made this little brother civilization once believe that their ancestors were the first mushrooms to learn to use tools 700,000 years ago. Yes, these are a group of fungus man. Today, their reincarnation is still very successful. It has developed for more than 16,000 years since entering the Bronze Age. They had already stepped out of motherhood a long time ago and went to colonize the first habitable planet in the stars. As a result, more than 1,000 years later, the people of the home planet and the colonists fought a world war and almost destroyed their own civilization. But society entered a period of regression and the Great Depression. And it took hundreds of years before it stabilized again. Many years later, they walked out of the star system. Judging from the quiet observations of the shelter's detectors, this group of primitive people, the split colonists, will definitely have another fight with the people from their home planet many years later. Maybe, in their eyes, there are only fungi people in this universe. Right? The cosmic war is the war between the fungi. There are also some interesting little brothers who are stuck on their own planet and can no longer go out. Most of them were unable to get out of the planet before the fossil energy was exhausted. So civilization had to start a civil war for the last bit of energy. They must enter the next reincarnation. Waiting for the rebirth of fossil energy, this will last tens of millions of years. Forbidden scholars regard this civilization as a fallen civilization. It has to enter a long civilization era without any progress in science. Tens of millions of years later, this civilization will awaken. There are also some little brothers who are born unlucky. They don't have the moon, lack of suitable fusion energy source, and the gaseous planet closest to them is at the farthest end of the orbit of the star. This is considered as if God doesn't take care of it anymore. The shelter's detectors are quietly observing these little brothers, and are even preparing to quietly establish some observation stations near their stars in the future. Study sociology well. Indeed, scholars now pay more attention to communications and sociology than to production, development, and war. Quantum communication technology has been proven unable to be used for communication and can only be used for encryption. The first quantum satellite launched by the shelter is only called a quantum satellite in the media, and it is a kind of eye-catching thing for marketing accounts. What scientists really call it is quantum encryption communication technology. It has been thoroughly proven that information cannot travel faster than the speed of light in the three-dimensional world. But the speed of light varies in different dimensions. And if we want the various territories of the Alliance to not have to send a letter for many years, like in ancient times in the future, then high-dimensional communication-based stations have become inevitable. Otherwise, if a group of people are colonized, a group of people will be divided. As for sociology, it has become the focus of research among forbidden scholars. This subject becomes increasingly important as we venture into the universe. If you want civilization to avoid reincarnation, science and technology and the military must be strong. If you want to avoid division and civil war, continue to develop at a high speed, and prevent civilization from entering a decadent era, then sociology must be set very, very high. Because once we experience a fallen era of civilization, the Dawn Alliance will enter dusk. It will be like those little brother civilizations, entering a long period of stagnant development. The Dawn Alliance obviously will not fall for fossil energy. They are now concerned about another kind of oil antimatter. Even if this thing relies on Dyson spheres to collect and manufacture it, there won't be many things in a year. This stuff is only plentiful near the galactic center. And it is not a simple matter to build an antimatter collection gas station tens of thousands of light years away. Recently, as George has become more and more impatient, the call for empire has become more and more intense. This is a side effect of the nobles not being completely revolutionized now. They have all become one big plutocrat after another. George's ideal was not fully realized. And in the end the Alliance drifted away, stepping on the accelerator towards the capitalist dictatorship empire. And George's sons are more ambitious than the last. And people in this new era actually believe that the concept of protectors is not suitable for the new era. Slavery and conquest are the themes. They have gradually abandoned their faith in the light of dawn. I think they will definitely do a lot of things after George's death. However, George has already planned to choose a real successor in the future to educate these guys, who don't know the heights of the world anyone can come. But he quits anyway. But on this day, a special group of visitors came. George raised his head and looked across the buildings that reached the sky. He looked at what looked like an unknown giant that was flat and shattered in the sky. That would be the Arbiter. It encompasses the entire sanctuary star. Valinea, a latecomer, promised to come before the ancient gods 2 years at most. But she ended up being more than 4,000 years late. Ibrahimovic? George looked at the airport girl floating in midair without a mouth. Uh-huh. Valinea said. Where is that little guy Ibrahimovic? The light of dawn has returned, George said. Thank you for coming. Valinea. Valinea looked not far away, where there was a little girl with 2 pigtails, chasing a ball of light crawling around. Wasn't that little ball of light the new Ibrahimovic? He has indeed returned to the light of dawn. However, this time, he seemed to be born in the minds of many girls. So by human standards, Ibrahimovic in this life should be a girl. It should be me thanking you. George, what are your wishes? Wish. George looked at his great-great-granddaughter Tausi running around, chasing the ball of light, and rubbed his face. Can you help me take him away? We can't stand it lately. This is one of several gadgets that separated after the combination of Dawn Light and Shadow Light. George felt that he should be regarded as the child of Dawn Light, just like the child of Dawn Light and Alpha. His name is Kamaya. Thinking of this, George couldn't help but rub his face. He controls the power of time and space reincarnation. It was an enhanced version of the school field, where people were kidnapped every day and trained inside. At one point, George thought this was the main god. And this guy often comes up with all kinds of tricks. She has the power of creation, like a super wishing machine. But the gadgets they came up with were all weird. A few days ago, this guy suddenly appeared at the Dyson ball and said he needed to maintain it. But it ended up being broken. Everyone has had enough of Kamaya. But no one knows that what Kamaya did was deliberately instigated by George. The alliance has developed rapidly enough, and ruling the galaxy may be inevitable in the future. He didn't want everything he built to become the believers of the next faceless men. And another Aloysius would appear, since his damned sons and those greedy plutocrats planned to turn their backs on the light of dawn after his death, and even planned to enslave it. Then they are not worthy of the protection of the light of the astral world. Thank you for taking care of Dawnlight all these years. You are a good Nani, Valinea said, but do you really have no wishes? The Arbiter can give you a new life. I see that you seem to be fulfilling the legacy of the Protector. Maybe the sheltered civilization will inherit us in the future, and you can lead your people to join us and fight with us against the faceless men. Maybe, but I didn't lead it. George closed his eyes, and 3 seconds later, he snored. Lorna came over and covered George with a blanket. She also has crow's feet. Valinea shook her head and sighed. He looked at the small ball of light that Tausi was chasing. What's its name? Lorna looked at Tausi, with a smile like her great-great-grandmother's face. Peach. Peach? What a good name. Valinea stretched out her hand. And then, a ball of light suddenly appeared in her hand. Then, the two disappeared together. In the starship. It seems to be an open-top place, with energy platforms at your feet that are not connected together. And above the head is the starry sky. The star of protection is in this starry sky. After seeing Valinea coming, the Grand Archon Tyro Jones bowed respectfully. Grand Arbiter Valinea, is George willing to become the new Grand Arbiter of the Divine Cathedral? Valinea looked at the asylum star in front of her and shook her head. The Archon sighed in disappointment. Tens of millions of years later, the gods are gone. The Alliance of Dawn, which was invincible throughout the entire galaxy, finally surrendered and did not venture to another river system. The descendants of those nobles, the plutocrats, resurfaced, overthrowing everything that George had built, and supporting his one. The ambitious son built a terrifying empire, and established an interstellar parliament of nobles. It has enslaved all species, just like the Holy Court back then. Depraved, arrogant, and decadent. This Tai Ginza United Interstellar Empire is unable to fulfill its role as a protector. The future collision with the Celiac demon spiders will be the day of destruction of the empire. And those bugs should also be taken care of by someone. Valinea, someone must correct all this, Tyro Jones said solemnly. To untie the bell, you must tie the bell. He is the only one who can communicate with the light of the star world without any obstacles. Those bugs, I am only afraid of him. Of course I will find George, but not now. Valinea opened the time and space projection and searched for this parallel universe. We will meet in 60 million years, and he will be a good nanny to Peach of. What's his name? Grand Archon Tyro Jones asked curiously. John Young. Just as George had guessed when he looked at the Earth in the Forbidden Sanctuary. The Earth government of this world is called the Earth Alliance. And his surname is no longer Chiao, but Zhang. Maybe it's because this little bandit leader has never known what it means to be low-key since he was a child. That day, the boss and I were too public, so his parents finally gave him such a name. Of course, it's mainly because his mother's surname is Yang. In this story, our George can still farm, but he is no longer farming the castle and the whole civilization. Just like when George once led the big players to protect the entire sanctuary, he will take the unscrupulous young players he trained with Tauzi, a super school, to secretly guard the entire Earth Alliance civilization, and use the magic and technology passed down from the Forbidden Sanctuary to teach them well. How should our descendants behave? The greedy and fatuous old emperor, the sickly and sinister Queen Tai Ginza, and the ambitious archbishop. These rulers who rule the entire galaxy never dreamed that that guy was actually their living ancestor. Of course, there are also those bugs that need to be taken care of.